I'm Dan Schneier. That's Jacob Gibbs, and this is Beyond the Box Score. And Jacob, as we get into our wide receiver rankings today, which one of my rankings really did you look at and just say, what the heck was this guy thinking? What the heck?
What the heck? Keon Coleman, wide receiver 37? What the heck? I'm looking, I got the variation between the two, and it's like the biggest we ever really get is like 10 spots apart because we talk a lot about these guys. And Keon Coleman was like, we're 27 spots apart or something.
Massive.
I'm excited to hear that one.
I feel like we're also 27 spots apart on Tesla, though you're on the opposite end. You're the high guy on Tesla.
That's where I want to be.
Way too low on Tesla, I guess, according to you at least. But today we are breaking down our wide receiver position rankings. If you've watched us this week, you've seen our running back rankings, our quarterback and tight end rankings. And at the end of today's show, we're going to mix in some fun stuff that we've been promising. We're going to read off listener questions. Those listener questions will come from the Apple and Spotify reviews. This is how you get your question answered on Beyond the Box Score. All you have to do is head over to iTunes, head over to Spotify, specifically iTunes for now. We're going to get to Spotify in a moment. Today's iTunes mostly. And leave a rating and a review. Within that rating and review, ask a question for the show. I do warn you people, though, at the risk of, I guess, seeming off-putting to some, but hopefully not many, I will work my way through the 5-star reviews before getting to the 3s. So if you want your question answered, you're best off giving a 5. Please hit the like button right now if you're watching the show. We need likes, and I will never, ever be too careful in asking for likes. So hit the like button, leave a comment on the show throughout. But without further ado, Jacob, let's get right into this thing. We got a lot to talk about. We're going wide receiver rankings, some thoughts on auction drafts, and listener questions.
I just checked, and we're at 300 on the dot on Spotify with a pristine 4.9. Thank you so much.
iTunes, I think, over 500. We want to get to 1K if we can by the start of the season.
Very cool.
It's a lofty goal.
All right, yeah. Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 2. I feel great taking CeeDee Lamb as high as 2 overall.
Same.
In PPR leagues. Anytime I get a click on CeeDee Lamb's name, it just feels good. He's really, really good. So what I've got here is Jamar Chase, and this is also a comparison with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I think is somebody who we're going to spend a little bit of time on because he's really easy to just gloss over. He's kind of the Josh Jacobs of receivers. Through 5 years, or as they enter year 5, PPR points per game through 4 seasons, NFL history. Odell Beckham and Justin Jefferson, the only ones above Jamar Chase. 19.59 for Jefferson, 19.56 for Chase. So it's basically a just dead even wash there. Michael Thomas is next, then Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Julio Jones, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown. AJ Green next. Just a fun stylistic one to throw in there in the top 10. So really, really good company. We have some just phenomenal receivers right now in the NFL. And I think, people realize that for the most part, but it's like seriously, historically good. And of course, the changing meta in the NFL to more passing and stuff like that over time affects these things a little bit. But honestly, I would say somebody like Julio Jones played in a more, even Michael Thomas played in a more favorable era for piling up passing stats than some of these guys are playing in right now.
Right.
So the fact that like these guys are, entering their prime and have been this good, just absolute like pristine picks at the top of the board. Don't overthink it. I know we've got a lot of exciting players. And so sometimes somebody like Amon-Ra St. Brown falls or a CeeDee Lamb falls. It's just a good pick, don't be like, why are they falling? It's just a good pick.
Yeah, exactly. And I have been not hesitant to draft Amon-Ra St. Brown this season, but I was expecting, Jacob, he would be kind of old news for fantasy managers and one of those guys that just falls to a surprisingly cheap price in my auction drafts. He has not been. The guy who that's been, who I want to get to next, that you're much higher on than I am, is Puka Nacua. I think, things might change from now until the start of the season. I know a lot of people listening, and that's why we're doing this, have their drafts this weekend. So we want to get them prepared for that. But if you're in auction drafts and even snake drafts, I think the expectation is you can get Puka Nacua at a really good price. And I don't know that will change because the Matthew Stafford factors, I believe, what's just weighing down the process of drafting him right now for a lot of people.
For sure. Puka as a player is so good. And then when you pair that with, of course, the wide receiver kingmaker in Stafford, but also McVay and everything that he does to boost Puka's production with design touches and everything, it's really unfair It's like George Kittle, except Puka gets to run a route on basically every drop back, whereas Kittle stays in and blocks.
Right.
So that it's really this just broken receiver. If he can be healthy over 17 games, he could just put up some record-breaking numbers. Stafford is the concern. So
Yeah.
if we knew that Stafford was good, if we knew that Stafford just followed the same career arc he seems to be on and plays 15 to 17 games, where would you have Puka in your rankings?
Yeah, but that guarantee, I would have him either 3 or 4 with Nico.
Yep, that's exactly where I'm even just maybe a little higher, where in my mind, he's
Yeah.
basically identical to CeeDee Lamb in that
Okay.
scenario. He's been so good as a fantasy player on a per opportunity basis. And I think the offense, I feel a little bit better about if we know that Stafford's healthy. Whereas the Cowboys, they, as excited as we are, the Cowboys just have this perpetual stink that they carry with them that scares me a little bit, right?
Yeah.
All right, Nico Collins, number 3. That's going to shock people, right? But
Yeah,
me and
we're ahead of
Dan
consensus, both of us on that.
both landed on Nico at wide receiver 3. He is wide receiver 1 in fantasy points per route run over the past 2 seasons combined. So what we need is that per route data to just extrapolate to a larger sample size of routes. We need you to stay healthy. Please give us a healthy season in Nico Collins. He could have 20 touchdowns. He's so good. I'm not into predicting injuries. Justin Jefferson already is maybe dealing with one. Puka Nakua's quarterback is dealing with one.
Sure.
Blake Neighbors is dealing with multiple. I'm taking Nico there. I'm taking the most productive receiver that we have in the NFL on a per opportunity basis.
Yeah, you made the case for him why I like him so much. The other reason would be I foresee big changes coming to the Texans offense from a stylistic standpoint after moving on from Bobby Slowick. There were just far too many opportunities. I saw some data on this yesterday where Slowick was in second and long situations and opted to run. I think that's going to be a big change this year. And that's a big key factor for me for fantasy. If you're getting out of those second long run situations, which are generally speaking some of the worst, I think outside of red zone fades, the worst play call by the numbers in the NFL. And I just think we're going to be a very pass-happy, pass-heavy team with Houston. And this year, at least, I'm hoping that CJ Stroud's weapons can stay a little healthy. Higgins, Kirk, a player I can't wait to discuss because I've been so much higher than consensus on him all year, and we haven't discussed him at all. And then potentially Jalen Noel, if he can work his way into the mix. So all that should help Nico. I'm perfectly fine getting Nico as early as 6th overall in my drafts.
The pass volume potential increase is the big note to me. Like it could be almost definitely will be a better offensive environment than last year. I mean, the offensive coordinator people were so excited about after the 2023 season, then he got canned the next year. Like that's how bad it was. If it's even just competent offensive line play and play calling and offensive design, and the team throws a lot, all of a sudden it's just monster numbers for this guy who on a per opportunity basis has been the best. And who's running the ball there? Like truly,
Right.
if Mixon can't play, like what are we just going to get Nick Chubb 15 plus times a game? That seems insane that would happen in the year 2025. Yeah, give me all the Puka.
Yeah, very pass happy team. All right, let's looking through these rankings. I want to get to your first thing you mentioned when I sent you my rankings, which is why the heck are you so low on Drake London? Because I don't think I am low on him, and I'm surprised you think I am. So I'm going to figure that out. But before we do that, I do want to touch on Neighbors because looking through our rankings, Jacob, I have Neighbors as wide receiver 4 overall. I think you have him all the way down at 9. My case for Neighbors is the following. If you look at the most unrealized air yards of any receiver in the NFL last year, you'll see Blink Neighbors up top on that list. I believe he's in the top 5 somewhere. If you look at the air yards and the catchable ball percentage from Russell Wilson versus Daniel Jones and Drew Lock last year, you'll see one of the biggest, starkest contrasts you'll see of any quarterback-to-quarterback comparison from the 2024 season. Those unrealized air yards for Neighbors are going to turn into realized air yards. They did with George Pickens, and George Pickens is nowhere near the wide receiver on a vertical plane that Malik Neighbors is. So many countless times. You think of the Bo Collins preseason moon ball. That was Bo Collins. Malik Neighbors houses that thing. And all I can say about Neighbors is I think the offense will remain designed around him. Russell Wilson, this is a little narrative stuff, Jacob, but Russell Wilson got his locker next to Neighbors. They've been working together on the offseason. I think we're going to see a volume similar to last year with Malik Neighbors, just a lot more productive because of the upgrade he has from a catchable ball percentage, specifically on the vertical plane, but also on those intermediate outside the numbers hole shots. When teams want to play zone on the Giants, Daniel Jones was very reluctant to throw outside the numbers. But I don't think Russell Wilson will be, and I think Malik Neighbors will be making a lot of plays in this offense. I love him this year.
I totally get it. We've contextualized Malik Neighbors, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, Drake London, Brian Thomas Jr., Lad McConkey in like very deep detail for you guys. If you want to check out, the thumbnail says per route primer. It's like this stat helped identify like Puka Nacua and Nico Collins' breakouts early. There's so much awesome info in that if you want to learn more about the receivers, and Neighbors especially. He's a very special player clearly when you watch him. But then when you dig into the data, it goes even beyond that. He had a record-breaking season in terms of first read target rates, for
Right.
any rookie ever. For an offense to design so much around him, speaks volumes. And then the big thing that stood out to me, which I'll go into more detail if you check out that episode, is that his target rates were so high, even though his horizontally breaking route rate was low. And so horizontally breaking routes are significantly, almost 50% more likely to draw a target than vertically breaking routes. So we're talking about routes that are, going and breaking sideways to the sideline or in, or maybe slants or stuff like that. Like anything that's going deep or coming back to the ball is not a horizontally breaking route. You're much more likely to draw targets on horizontally breaking routes. And Malik Neighbors' rate, I believe, was 28%. It was
Right.
one of the lowest of any of the extremely productive fantasy receivers. And still, he had a 30+% target share as a rookie. That's just like wild to me to be able to be in such a vertically oriented role and still have such a high target rate. And so to me, it's like this sky is the limit. Maybe beyond that, we don't really know what this guy might be able to do. There's plenty of reasons to be excited about Russell Wilson being able to hit him on the deep ball and open some of that up that wasn't there with Daniel Jones last year.
But
And
what's the but?
still I have him ranked at wide receiver 9, because all of these guys, every single one of them is awesome. I feel good about Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brian Thomas Jr., Drake London, Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson. We need to make sure we don't leave this first section here without talking about Jefferson. All of them are great. Even in the overall rankings, he comes in very low relative to consensus, Malik Neighbors, that is.
Sure.
And it's because, we've talked about Brock Bowers at length, Christian McCaffrey. Like there's a lot of bets that I feel so good about placing. And when I look at Neighbors, I don't know if he actually, and this just sounds wrong because of how good he is as a player. I don't know if he actually has the upside to give us the league-winning 350 PPR point season. I don't. Normally, that kind of season comes for a player later into their career. And a big reason
on better
why
offenses too.
Yes, a big reason why is because often these mega superstar receivers are drafted onto teams that are not able to produce that kind of a season. And I think that's exactly what we have with Neighbors here. That's what we had with BTJ last year.
Right.
But maybe it changes this year. But we feel good about Liam Cohen. There's a lot of reasons to believe that it might change. I just don't feel as strong about the Neighbors case for it changing.
I could use that case against you on Bowers, though, to be quite frank, with the team context there, at least limiting potentially the break fantasy upside season. But you may be higher.
We are not talking about that today.
We're not talking about today. We don't have time for that. You may be higher also on what Geno can do for that offense than Russell, which is perfectly fair. All right, let's move past it. Let's go to
Drake and Justin Jefferson.
Okay, so Drake London.
Why did I call Dana on Twitter? Just for fun. Just because Drake.
I figured because I have guys like Amon-Ra ahead of him, BTJ. I feel like, and London, just to be clear, it's a drop off in my tiers when we get after London. And I was considering AJ to be there, but he's moved into his kind of his own tier. So London is part of that first tier for me.
Yeah. As he should be. I think that London, I've considered pushing him ahead of Puka Nacua. I think you could consider taking him ahead of Justin Jefferson if you just want to feel safe, because he doesn't have a current injury. But the offensive line situation does scare me a little bit with Atlanta. I don't, ultimately feel super confident in Michael Penix. But if you want to check out that per route data primer that I mentioned earlier, that's the prime spot to like. The top comment is like, man, I thought I loved Drake London, but I had no idea how deep my London love could grow. Like after listening to this, it's really a compelling case. There's so many factors coming into it where it does feel like this could culminate into a really, really like special season from a production standpoint. Justin Jefferson.
One more thing, just one thing on London, why he's probably 9 for me, and I'm less likely to draft him. And I've said I'm going to try to give some auction drafting, salary cap drafting observations as we work through content. During draft season so far, I've done 5 auction drafts, all competitive redraft processes, no keeper league, so full field. Drake London has been a bidding war in every single one of them. And Drake London has been priced to the point, Jacob, where he's been more expensive then one of Amon St. Brown, Puka Nacua, sometimes two of those players. And I know that's fine for you because you have him up at 6. But he's pricing himself into a range where I don't typically draft. For me, when it comes to auction drafts, Jacob, these hot names like a Drake London, I tend to fall off on them because, again, the pricing gets not out of control, but it just gets priced to a point where it's like, I should be getting a little bit of a discount on London going from Nico to London or Neighbors to London. But, honestly, according to your rankings, really, I shouldn't be getting a discount.
Yeah, I think he's just one of the best profiles we have at any position.
Fair.
I want to hear where you're at with Justin Jefferson. I don't think we've talked about him very much. I have him at 4 behind Nico, CeeDee Lamb, and Jamar Chase. You have him at 5 with Malik Neighbors ahead of him.
Yeah, look, I do a lot of auction drafts as we've talked about, so I haven't ended up with Jefferson yet. I have a few more. It's unlikely I'm going to draft any Jefferson this year. It's not an issue with the player at all. The skill set he scored in fantasy with anything that's been put in front of him. I just have that you know where I'm at with the Minnesota offense. I don't want to really buy into it right now. I don't trust JJ that much. And I can trust JJ. Give me 4 games on film that I can watch of him in O'Connell's offense, and he'd be like, oh crap, this guy's actually better than Darnold for this system. And then everything changes. But we don't get that as fantasy analysts. We have to make our projections, and I think this passing game will take a step back from even Darnold and even Sam Mullen and even not Dobbs, because Dobbs didn't really run it that well. People think he did, but it was like a 1-game sample size, and then they were kind of in the others. So I just don't want to buy in really into that offense, with the exception of Addison, just because Addison's so cheap because people are over inflating the significance of the suspension.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about Minnesota's offense a lot since we've talked, because you're low on Hockenson, you're low on the running backs, and I'm much higher on JJ McCarthy. And I think you mentioned in the last podcast, you're like, it wouldn't shock you if they were like in the bottom 10 in scoring, and that does seem crazy at face value when we're talking about a Kevin O'Connell offense. But I remember, I don't know where they've settled now, but initially the Vegas implied point totals, they were like 21st or something like that. I was very, very surprised how low they were. They were like below the Bears, below the Falcons.
Atlanta's down there too, by the way.
Yeah. So that's noteworthy. I think that's kind of where I'm at with Jefferson too. I've got him. I mean, I still have him 7th overall. So you would take CMC over him.
Yep.
You would take Gibbs over him.
Push come to shove, I'd probably take Gibbs over him. But you know what? Full PPR, I'm taking Jefferson still.
Okay, so he's like just at the back.
I'm taking Nico over him. Obviously, I have Nico wide receiver 3.
Yeah,
and he's just before Neighbors and just before Gibbs for me. So he's still in that mid to upper range of the first round.
You probably can't go wrong with Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, it's still a safe pick. All right, we're gonna take a quick break and get right back into some more wide receiver rankings for you.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
All right, let's get back into this thing, Jacob. We've just cycled through some of our favorite players to draft in general in fantasy, the players we feel most confident in. Let's move forward. Who else, or do we need to hit anybody else from there? Did we miss anybody?
I want to talk about Amon St. Brown and then some of the round 2-3 receivers. So if I can share my screen here, I've got a big old block of text to throw at you. You don't need to read this. You can check this tweet out later if you want. You've maybe heard me mention this on the podcast before. We've talked about it, Dan. I tried to clean up yard per route run rate because there are a bunch of factors that influence yards per route run. And at this point, yards per route run is like one of the most used stats, I feel like, in the fantasy space. People know that it's been pretty predictive, and it's kind of just like the holy grail of wide receiver stats. But man, there are a lot of things that really skew yards per route run.
Right.
And so I tried to clean it up. I removed sacks and I removed scrambles because on those plays, there's no throw. So it's a route run with no throw. Think about like the Bears, where Caleb is running a lot, running for his life and getting sacked or scrambling. And Rome Odunze is just not getting any chance of ever getting a target. That weighs down the yard per run rate. I also removed screens, mostly out of curiosity. I'll find the best version of this stat, but on a play where DJ Moore is just getting spam screens, Marvin Mims is getting screens over and over, like that does affect routes too, because you can't get a target on a screen that's not designed to you. And then also remove snaps under center, because snaps under center have been significantly more efficient on a per route basis. If you look at, there's a bunch of things, 2 wide receivers being on the field compared to 3 wide receivers, you're much more likely to draw a target because you have fewer target earners to compete for targets with. Play action targets are much more efficient than non-play action targets, and under center plays result in play action 85% of the time per Lord Reeves. So like all of this stuff, like the Shanahan tree, Ben Johnson trees, like those coaches are the ones that are really, really boosting per route efficiency through a lot of these things. We talked about in more detail on the like coaching YouTube video that we did, and then also like the fantasy cheat codes if you want to like get all the nitty gritty on it. But the easiest way to filter it all out is remove snaps under center. And that also leaves us with a fairly large sample size because it's about 45% of the plays. Whereas like if you remove 2 receiver sets, or if you remove 3 receiver sets, that like takes all the plays out for some of these offenses. So this leaves us with a decent sample size, and it's just looking at shotgun plays without screens, sacks, or scrambles. So basically you're lined up at wide receiver in a play that looks like it's going to be a pass. That's what the defense is probably looking at. It looks like a pass. Can you go win? Right. And some players were really, really affected by this. And so let's hit on Jameson Williams, because I think he is, to the public, probably going to be one of the most egregious rankings that we have.
Yeah.
So without these plays removed, Jameson Williams had a yard per route run rate of 2.11 last year. That was just below Davante Smith, just above Terry McLaurin. With all of this stuff filtered out that I just mentioned, that drops to 1.67 compared to 2.75 for Davante Smith, 2.82 for Terry McLaurin. In my opinion, just from watching them, those two are significantly better route runners, significantly better at attacking the ball than Jameson Williams. And they're both better with the ball in their hands, especially McLaurin. I really, really think that Ben Johnson helped Jameson Williams more than any player in that system. And finally, we've arrived at Amon-Ra St. Brown. Within this lens, Amon-Ra St. Brown still wide receiver 4 in yards per route run last year, behind only A.J. Brown, Nico Collins, and Mike Evans. Puka didn't have enough routes to qualify. But above Justin Jefferson, Drake London, a bunch of these really productive players, Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, that's where Amon-Ra St. Brown ranked. And I just think that's important, because what we're hearing is that the new coaching staff is like asking the receivers to just go win. And a lot of people are excited by Jameson Williams because the new coaching staff has really steamed up Jameson Williams this offseason. He's a super talented guy. He could be much more productive than what we've seen. Sometimes this happens, and you don't want to get too caught up in the last season's data when you're talking about somebody that could just keep getting better and better and better. And that could be JMO. But Amon-Ra, we know exactly what he is. So just again, don't worry about picking Amon-Ra St. Brown, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I actually am starting to get more of Amon-Ra interest. I haven't gotten him just yet in too many leagues. But as far as Jameson goes, I think a lot of the reason people will look at our ranking of Jameson and be like, this is insane, is due to what you mentioned, that coach speak this offseason. It's been unbelievable. I mean, I don't think any player has gotten the coach speak that he's got. I recently saw Dan Campbell talking about he's going to break out. Look, all that sounds good and it's great. And I think in a lot of these situations, the coaches are incentivized to steam up their players, especially a player like Jameson Williams, who he wants to, make feel like you're a big part of this team now. But then the actual game goes into play, and we've seen this Lions offense. Yeah, there's going to be a variation of it without Ben Johnson. This Lions offense isn't an offense that's featuring. It's not like, let me try to put this in better terms. It's not like watching a Sean McVay offense where we know Davante Adams and Puka are going to dominate those targets. These targets are going to go to Laporta. These targets are going to go to Gibbs. And the majority of them are going to go to Amon-Ra St. Brown. So where does Jameson break out from? It's either from big plays, more touchdowns, or a big change in how the offense operates, and he becomes a much bigger focal point from a target standpoint. That latter one, I see least likely to happen. I don't want to bet on touchdowns taking a huge jump, in which case I have him ranked low, but I think the players that we're drafting ahead of him, I'd make the case are all better bets.
Yeah, we're excited about a bunch of those players. I'm not trying to just bury JMO because I don't think that's a good process. He's really talented. He could surprise us.
It's a role issue.
Real quick on this before we leave everything I just told you, I think that this list is very interesting. It's wide receivers whose data looked much better within that lens that I just gave you. The list is A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, Davante Smith, Calvin Ridley, Jalen Waddle, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze. Wide receivers who look worse within that lens, Deebo Samuel, DJ Moore, Jameson Williams, Jordan Addison, Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman, Jerry Jeudy. I saw this list and I immediately sent it to Matt Harmon because it just like reeked of reception perception. And he's like, yep, that like passes the eye test almost exactly. Like with the guys that I think are a little under or overrated.
To be fair though, to that, my only devil's advocate for you, Jacob, would be those guys may be under or overrated for real wide receiver purposes, but in fantasy, those touches are valuable. That's a
great point. Like we sometimes get obsessed with like, production not being sustainable. Puka is getting steamed up with scheme touches, but it's like, getting screens and stuff is good. Yes, for sure. Let's talk about Jackson Smith-Njigba. He was one of the players who made that list that looked better within this lens. And I do think that's encouraging because overall his per route data is a little bit concerning through 2 years, but there's a number of ways to quantify that. He's going to have, I think, less target competition than ever before in year 3. It could be a big season for JSN. So we've got Jackson Smith-Njigba, Ladd McConkey, and AJ Brown, who I think are bets on efficiency. They're probably all going to be run-first offenses, I think is the way that they would like to play. But offenses that create a lot of efficiency through play action. And each of these players are good, especially AJ Brown and Ladd McConkey might be like 2 of the top 5 or 8 receivers talents in the whole NFL. And the JSN is a very, very good player as well. I know that you shy away from JSN. Where are you at on Ladd? Let me check our rankings here.
Ladd is the wide receiver that I have that's the big tier break for me with Ladd. I'm really excited about London. I'm really excited about BTJ. When we drop into past that range, the Ladd, and honestly, I have AJ Brown ahead of Ladd, and he's in kind of his own tier for me. Then it goes to that Ladd T Higgins tier, and that's the tier of like, I'm a little bit uncertain about things, aspects of their profile, but also like the injury history with both of those two.
Yeah, the quarterback play for sure of this group favors Ladd McConkey.
Yeah,
I was just writing about him today, and it's like, people are getting concerned with Ladd, and I get that. But he's been falling to me like in the middle or even the back of round 3.
Yes.
Such an easy pick for me there. And
Great.
I get all the reasons to be concerned, but at the end of the day, like we have a guy who's always open and a quarterback who can make any throw on the field. And maybe there's target concerns. Maybe Keenan Allen has been getting targets every step along the way his whole career, including last year. Maybe that affects him. I don't know. But what I do know is that when I watch this guy, I'm like amazed at what I'm watching. Like you never compare anyone to Antonio Brown. It's the closest thing I've ever seen to Antonio Brown since Antonio Brown. I
love that comp.
So good, man. So I have no problem betting on him. I really
think
the
thing with him, it's what we talk about a little bit with Bryce Young to Tet. It's when you start to see those next level anticipatory throws between the two players. And Justin Herbert is one of the best anticipation throwers in the NFL by far. So that could, last year became a cheat code at times, those out patterns that he would just break to the outside. The ball would be there coming in on a line with velocity. And it would just be like, and I think for that reason, his yards per catch will remain up and he'll still be like more of a big play threat than people realize. It's just the issue for me. It's an equation problem for McConkey. It's 1, touchdown upside, and then 2, just that injury history.
For sure. Real quick on JSN, and then we'll move on from this group. I think AJ Brown and Ladd are just pretty much exactly where they should be. But of the two, Ladd is the one who falls more often. I saw him go behind JSN, T Higgins, and Tyreek Hill the other day.
Wow.
And it's just like sometimes he does fall. People are getting worried. Jackson Smith-Njigba I need to defend because this is one of the biggest discrepancies between our rankings. I'm at 12. Dan has him at wide receiver 22.
You're closer to consensus on JSN, so I'm the off one here.
Dan you've given all the reasons. Sam Darnold, dubious about Sam Darnold, worried about the offensive line, worried about the offensive environment in general.
I'm partially worried about him as a fantasy scorer from what his role is for scoring touch. I feel like his production was very much influenced by the reception total last year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll push back on that. I think he's somebody who can win at any time against any coverage.
I would agree with that. I loved him as a prospect. It's just let me phrase that better. Touchdown upside based on the offensive team environment in the context there.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Just today, we're going to talk about Chris Olave within this context later. I was talking to the Coach Speak Index on that podcast. And I brought up Jackson Smith-Njigba as like the top of the range of the top player within the range of guys who like you worry a little bit about touchdown upside.
Yes.
Everybody else in this wide receiver range that's getting picked in the top 24, like probably can get there. It was like him, Tedero, McMillan,
Zay Flowers should definitely be
Zay
in that mix.
Flowers. We'll get to that discussion later. But I just thought it was really interesting that he was in that range because he doesn't play in like an offense that could produce a ton of targets and a ton of passing. Like the Saints might be behind all the time, passing all the time. It's possible that the Seahawks are behind, but like I think their defense could be nasty.
That's the thing. Second half of the season, DVOA, Seahawks, I believe it was either them or the Dolphins who made the biggest jump from first half to second half in defensive DVOA.
Yeah, I think they want to run the ball and lean on the defense. So there are definitely ways that JSN could be like outside the top 24, just like a straight up disappointment. That's how Dan has him ranked as 22. That could happen. I also think that where I have him ranked is totally valid because he fits the profile perfectly for what you want from a league winner. He's entering year 3. We've seen him be really productive at times. And that there is like lots of target opportunity available to him. And I do think that if this offense works, it's basically just that I'm so bullish on Clint Kubiak. That's basically where it is. And I really think I'm a lot more bullish on JSN as a player too. So if we get the best version of that, then like it wouldn't surprise me if he's pushing up into the top, like basically like, it's like Ladd McConkey and I don't know. I was going to say like
get him ahead of AJ Brown, right?
No, I don't think so. No,
I don't think so. There for touchdowns there. So like with JSN, it's my main culp. It's yes, I'm worried about the team context, but the main thing is I just feel like there's been no receiver who's gone from such a drastic change in offensive scheme in a bad way for his fantasy value. Jackson now to Jackson, what he had to now. Like if you're looking at the offense they ran last year, and I know it was a terrible offense from the standpoint of Ryan Grubb couldn't get his pass protection set. Like it was bad. There were issues within it. He was trying to run a college offense in the NFL. But just what they actually ran, dude, it was a lot of spread, 3 receivers on the field. And that is exactly how Jackson won it at Ohio State. It's get him lined up, give him a 2-way go, have the field spread out, and now he has space to operate in and win those routes. If he's not operating, like I still trust Kubiak to design these routes, deep overs over the middle and crossing routes that are going to, like, you know what the Niners do, crossing routes that are going to create separation. He gets the ball out there. That's cool. Jackson will hit those. But I want to get him isolated in those one-on-one situations more often. And I think that's where a lot of the receptions came from. So I just see such a drastic change in offensive idea that it just hurts me with a player like this.
Yeah. I for all the reasons I've talked about, think that those could be efficiency boosters. But I think what you're saying with
boosters, yes, volume decreasers.
Right. And I think what you're saying with his skill set is valid. Like I've had some concern too. It's like, I think that he can fit into this, but we haven't really seen him do it that much at any point. So I don't know for sure. It's going to be really interesting, man. Seattle was so weird. They just like scrapped everything. And it's basically like, it truly feels like they're just like, Clint Kubiak is the guy. It's like, I hope you're right, because I have a lot of concerns about offensive line and quarterback and your running back health and your receivers who like don't have any speed. Like, I don't know if this is going to work.
That's the problem, unless they get Torrey Horton on the field.
Hell yeah.
That's serious. That's serious. They need that speed on the field, honestly, to make that scheme work. I think at least, but we'll see. All right, let's move it forward. Yep.
It's break time, buddy.
Oh, let's take a quick break then. We'll get right back into that third-ish tier of wide receivers. All right.
Yeah, we've got an interesting discussion here between T. Higgins, George Pickens, and Mike Evans. The chat seems to think we're low on Evans. I suppose that's my fault. I have him wide receiver 16. You have him wide receiver 13.
I love Evans this year.
You have T. Higgins 1 spot ahead of him. I have T. Higgins at 13, 1 spot ahead of George Pickens, and 3 spots ahead of Evans. Dan came in lower on Pickens than I expected, 16, which is still, I think, very high relative to consensus.
Yes.
3 fairly similar players here where they're not clearly defined target hog wide receiver 1 guys. They're getting a lot of downfield targets. They bring a lot of touchdown upside. They're in offenses that could produce a ton of passing volume. Take me through like Evans versus Pickens, because I did not realize that you were higher on him than Pickens.
Yeah, I'm definitely higher on Evans than Pickens. I've been high on Evans all offseason. So I think the negative case for Evans is simply just age. I can't really see any other reason. When I looked at some of the per route data for him and the separation score, his separation score in those inbreakers last year was pretty phenomenal. If you look across the board, all of his what'd you say?
Liam Cohen alert.
Sure, like that could be Liam Cohen designing it. It could also just be what they run again this year because they know like this dude can win at that level. He still separates and wins with the best of their NFL wide receivers. So I still view him from all those numbers side as a top 6, 7 overall wide receiver in a great offensive environment with a rapport already built in with Baker Mayfield and a touchdown score, as he always has been, in addition to creating separation and getting those yards. So I don't put him anywhere near that first tier of receivers because I think the volume will hold that back. But man, I think everything else should be there from an efficiency standpoint and a touchdown scoring standpoint with a great offense, great offensive line, and again, the rapport with Baker. So I just love Evans.
I think after our conversation today, I'm going to move Jackson Smith-Njigba behind T. Higgins, Pickens, Courtland Sutton, and Mike Evans.
Yeah.
He'll be one spot ahead of Tedero McMillan. I think those two actually profile pretty similarly. Okay, so I want to talk about Sutton. He's been steaming up my board, man. Just like keeps moving up. So I have him ahead of Evans now and just one spot behind Pickens. I've got Sutton at wide receiver 15. My thoughts with Evans is there's always the hamstring injury thing that could pop up.
True.
That does scare me. He hasn't had any like severe like bunch of games missed, but he does miss a game or 2 or 3 here and there. And it could be worse than that at some point, especially as he's getting older. Different offense. I do think Liam Cohen really helped with the route designs last year. Maybe they do just emulate that. You know, the Grizzard was a part of what they were doing last year for sure. The new offensive coordinator there. And then, you know, if Emeka Egbuka really shines out of the gate, then all of a sudden you've got like 2 new pieces in him and Bucky Irving that are like ascending and potentially going to be more and more featured, you know? And if Godwin comes back and is even 85% of what he was last year, then it's like, it's kind of a lot. That's kind of a lot of mouths to feed. And it wouldn't surprise me if Evans drops down into that like 19 to 22% target share number. In which case I think a lot of these guys would just be more productive than him. Let's talk about Sutton. In the metric that I gave where I like cleaned up Parat data, one of the biggest standouts to me was Sutton. Just looked absolutely dominant when it came to like going out and beating guys out wide and just being a wide receiver 1 who wins routes. I thought the stat from Ryan Heath the other day was crazy. The Bo Nix was 33rd in highly accurate throw rate over the first half of the season and 2nd in highly accurate throw rate over the second half of the season. And Sutton was a direct beneficiary of that. He averaged 17.4 PPR points over the second half of the season, which would have been like wide receiver, I think 6 or 7 or something like that over the full. It's like in the CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins range in terms of per game production last year. That's what Sutton was at over the second half. So I look at this Broncos offense. It could be honestly like top 8, I don't know if it could push much higher than that. It would have to be a big step forward from Knicks. But everything you want infrastructurally, I don't know if that's a word, is there. Coaching, offensive line is there. If the run game improves in a significant way, which it could, there's 2 paths to it. Both Dobbins and Harvey could be big improvements over what they got last year, which was kind of nothing from the running back room. That's an improvement. And, you know, I think it's possible that like somebody like Pat Bryant could be an improvement from the guys that they had out there last year at the wide receiver 2 and 3 spots. I really liked his film, just a solid player. And then the last point is Marvin Mims, if he's actually going to play a real role, has just been a guy who does not get any targets outside of like deep shots and screens. So when it comes to like an actual pass drop back, like read the field, who are you looking for? It's like Sutton. It's Sutton every time, right? Maybe Troy Franklin gets, but he doesn't really profile as much more than like a deep burner, you know, like somebody, he's not getting more than 14, 15% of the targets on a good day. Like that's the best that he can get to really. So Sutton to me just feels like the focal point of an offense that could be really, really good. And when I look at the guys in this range, it's like, that's actually kind of unique. You know, I don't think Pickens is that. Mike Evans is close to that. Davante Adams isn't really that. Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't really that. Like Tyreek Hill could be that. Rashee Rice could be that, you know, but like most of these guys aren't. And if they are, it's like Calvin Ridley on a much worse offense or Tedero McMillan on a much worse offense.
Yeah.
I think the case for Sutton is just really, really strong. He's somebody I wasn't really drafting at the beginning of the process because there's so many young guys to get excited about, you know, but he's not old. He's still like at the end of his prime. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if he has a big year has like 14 touchdowns or something like that if Nick takes a step forward.
You made a strong case here. It's like similar to what's been going on with ARSAB at the top of the board. This is middle of the board, and he doesn't get bid on big time in these auctions. I'm in $15, $16, $200 super flex auction. Some of them one straight up auction just in I think $21. It's a factor of people are maybe fatigued on him because he's an older player. And wow, I can take a 23-year-old JSN. Why would I ever pass up on that? Well, the reasons being are what Jacob just outlined. Much better team context, built-in rapport with the quarterback already. That's only going to get stronger. And a touchdown score on a great, we already talked about the great offense, but a touchdown score and somebody who could potentially fire up a lot more targets than people realize. So I'm with you on this one. I've obviously moved him up my board as well.
I do have Pickens ahead of him still in the chat. Some people are a little confused as to why Pickens is so high. So we've talked about him at length. There's a number of shows you'll find us talking about him. We did a value show where we looked at each player at ADP and put them like S tier, A tier, B tier. Pickens was the top guy on the board. We just think he's like a clear value. We both are comfortable with him all the way up in round 4. And that's because we think the offense could pass a ton. There's no running identity there. The defense could be a problem. And Pickens is a legitimately really talented player. He's in his contract year. He has a lot to prove, and he could get a lot of one-on-ones with defenses worried about CeeDee Lamb. The fit is good with Dak Prescott. There's so many reasons to be excited about Pickens. There's also continued upside. If anything were to happen to CeeDee Lamb, where all of a sudden he could be getting 10, 12 targets a game. It's just, he's a really exciting pick. Literally the only concern I have is like the mentality side of things. If, Pittsburgh doesn't really miss most of the time when they let a receiver go. That's what I would worry about. And that's basically all that I have to worry about.
That's an interesting way to think about it. Yeah. Look, he was going into a contract year. He just probably didn't fit overall what they deemed to be a long-term solution. And I'm not so sure he will fit the Cowboys in that way either. But in a contract year with Dak Prescott, we've talked about it at extent. So you can go back and look at our ADP value show where we go in depth on Pickens. I don't want to spend too much more time there. Let's talk about another player in the rankings, one that you're higher on than I am, but I've definitely moved up my boards after yesterday's news, and it was Rashee Rice. So I know you love Rashee Rice. Am I too low on him?
I actually don't want to spend any time on Rice. Okay. I do think you're too low. I think Rice is your clearest path to a league winner. We've talked about him a ton on the podcast. Also, if you just search Twitter, if you search Jacob Gibbs, Rashee Rice, you'll find a bunch of clips from the podcast and a bunch of stats. He's one of the most productive on a per opportunity basis, one of the most productive receivers in the NFL. And he's in an offense where the role is perfect for him to just pile up numbers.
Yeah.
I think you have an opportunity here to form a plan around Rice. If you're able to get him at a value from that point on in the draft, then you are being cognizant of like which receivers can help bridge the gap for you in the early season. And I've got names just real quickly who I would throw out cheap receivers who can help you get there. I think that could be productive early in the year. Jerry Jeudy with Joe Flacco at quarterback. I don't necessarily want to bet him at the end of the year, but I think he could be a top 15 or 20 receiver for the first 2 months. That wouldn't surprise me if Flacco's in there the whole time. Deebo Samuel, Adam Thielen, Jalen Coker, Christian Kirk, I think are all guys who can help get you there. Could be good producers at the beginning of the year and are very cheap. And then like some names that are truly free in drafts. Tyquan Thornton, Dan had higher than me. I didn't even have him in my top 80, I don't think.
My boy.
You had him in your top 70. You had him ahead of Marquise Brown. That shocked me. But Tyquan Thornton has looked good. There's definitely upside there. And I expect him to play quite a bit. Doesn't play a similar role to Rashee Rice, but I think they can just shift things around and get him on the field and just have crazy speed. Dude, him, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy on the field together, that's so insane. Yeah. Romeo Doubs for the Packers, I think is going to play a lot at the beginning of the year, always does, and is going to be probably a pretty productive guy. Darius Slayton for the Giants is an underrated guy who could help get you there. And then the last one is Olamide Zaccheaus for the Bears.
Yeah.
They're obsessed with this guy. Ben Johnson's obsessed with him. Caleb Williams loves him. I think at the beginning of the year, he's somebody that like is not even going to be drafted that you can plug in if you need to.
One more I'll throw in there.
Yeah.
You might have mentioned him. I just had to do a quick thing for work. I hope you didn't mention him. I didn't think I heard his name. And you probably think he doesn't count, but I do think he counts. Jalen Coker.
I said Jalen Coker.
Oh,
I said Jalen Coker.
I missed it.
Always got to represent.
It's on me. That's on me. But today, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, but today the Panthers all but confirmed that Jalen Coker will be their slot this year, which is as good as it gets for his fantasy value.
Love it. All right. Marvin Harrison Jr., Davante Adams, Tyreek Hill. I want to have a discussion about those three. I'm very low on Tyreek, but I have to acknowledge the fact that like if he bounces back to what we've seen, it's like
You win your draft.
Yeah, that's basically it. Like he's
You
been
win your league.
that good. I have concerns about the offense, and then
Same.
also a lot of the skill related stuff that Matt Harmon, charts with his reception perception, where he's looking at all the routes and looking at the win rates in different types of scenarios, suggests that this is an aging receiver that took a step back last year. Who knows why? It could be other things other than age, and maybe he's back to being the guy we've seen in the past. I'm totally fine just letting somebody else bet on that. There's a lot of other receivers I really, really like. Marvin Harrison Jr., I did not expect to be lower on than you. Do you have any MHJ thoughts? I didn't know. I kind of thought that you were not a big fan.
So I actually moved him up late in my process. When it comes to MHJ, I want to. So the scenario is still in play for MHJ, where I feel like, one, he could be used more on routes that get him not only open, but give him a chance to make a play with Kyler as his quarterback. And two, I believed in the talent. I still believe in the talent. I watched so much Marvin Harrison tape at Ohio State because the Giants were in the mix for him. And I think that this is the only time you're going to be able, it's not the only time, but right now you can make a bet on Marvin Harrison Jr. at such a discounted price here at wide receiver 20 for what I believe could eventually be a top 5 talent in the NFL, that I want to make that bet. Not a lot of target competition outside of Trey McBride. Potential for a jump in rapport with Kyler. We hope, we can only pray. And more importantly, a potential for them to finally use him better. Like, he needs to play in the slot more often too. He needs tight splits. He needs in-breaking routes. And he was really good. Speaking of Matt Harmon, he was actually really good charting wise on the in-breakers last year, which I always thought was going to be how he dominated in the NFL, but they didn't throw him a lot. We saw one in the preseason. That was at least a potentially good sign. So I just think the value, like the player, makes sense here. And I'm willing to make that gamble in this range over some of these other players.
I'm very glad to hear you choose the words, they didn't throw them a lot, because that's exactly right. They didn't throw them a lot. He actually got a lot more of those opportunities than people realize. He was third in the number of horizontally breaking routes coming off of play action of any receiver last year. They really increased his horizontally breaking route rate as the year went on.
Yep.
But somebody's not making the throw. That's something that I still worry about with MHJ going forward. But I do agree the talent is there and things could look a lot better than last year. And that's all that we really need for him to be a fine pick in this range. And if things break in an unexpected way to the upside, if the coaching is able to just coerce something out of Kyler that we're not expecting or haven't seen before, then all of a sudden, the talent is there for him to be, a top 12 type of player. Overall, I think the offense is going to lean on the run game. And so I'm not drafting very much MHJ. He doesn't project all that well for me.
Sure.
But I get it. He's one of these receivers who looked really good. When I cleaned up the yard per route run data, he looked much, much better within that lens. Davante Adams, I have below.
It's a big one to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. I have below MHJ. I have below Travis Hunter. I have Davante Adams at wide receiver 22. He keeps moving down. Dan has him at wide receiver 14.
Yeah.
Which is about where I had him. If we were, I think, sitting right here and we had the same assurance that I laid out earlier, like we know that Stafford's going to play 16 games or whatever, I'm pretty sure I would have Davante basically at wide receiver 12, like above T. Higgins and Jackson Smith-Njigba and those guys. Where would he be for you?
Well, he'd actually be probably right where he is right now, maybe as higher. Yeah, because I'm not really discounting Puka because for me, Puka would have been at where I have him ranked, which I believe is wide receiver 6 or 7, regardless of the Stafford. I'm not baking the Stafford stuff into it pretty much at all. It is what it is. We have to just hope his back is fine. There's going to be a lot of injuries in the NFL. We're not very good at predicting them, in my opinion, as a group, as anyone is. Even the fantasy doctors, dude, I'm not going to get into this right now, Jacob, but like, Achan's back for me. There's just like stuff that happens. Like, if you're a team doctor, that's going to be the best chance you have. Otherwise, we're really all just guessing. So with Adams, part of the reason I have Puka a little bit lower than you is because I think Adams is the best receiver he's played with since he got there. I don't think Kupp was very good in Puka's years. I think he just played the role in McVay's offense well through his injuries and what was left. Adams can play this role so much better. One thing people don't realize about Adams' time in Green Bay and throughout the NFL, he's actually been even more dominant in the slot because he can play the outside. And for a while he did, but then they kind of gave him a shot in the slot. They're like, this dude's even more dominant in the slot because of his release package off the line of scrimmage. It's the best in the NFL. And on two-way goes that you get in the slot, that's unguardable. I think McVay is so excited to work with a player like this. And so I'm just really high on Adams. And he's a guy, again, like I mentioned this with Puka, and I mentioned this with Sutton. You don't have to pay the price of wide receiver 14. You're paying a wide receiver 22 price on Adams in every auction I've been in so far. He's going for less than Hunter. He's going for less than Hill, less than Harrison Jr. Nobody wants to bid on this guy because of the Stafford situation, because he's old. That combination of things, people don't want to bid on him for that. Even in snakes, he fell really far in a recent snake I was in, and I took him. But I'm willing to bet on the talent, and I'm willing to bet on what I deem to be the best quarterback he's played with since Rodgers.
Yeah. Well, I'm worried that if he's not playing with that quarterback, it's going to be like, you can't really use him. Let me talk
Can you use Puka in that regard?
Yes, I do think so. Absolutely.
Okay.
I think scheme touches. And I think also his role is just his skill set is more conducive to like being able to turn short yardage opportunities into big plays and stuff like that. I think here's how I see Adams in the offense. And I'm curious if it will feel right or wrong to you. How I see Adams in this offense is that he's a souped up version of what they've been getting from Demarcus Robinson. I think as I look at the rest of the receivers on the team, the top two, they've got a bunch of guys, like even down to Mumfield and players like that they like. They seem to like all the receivers. They've said it's the deepest room they've had. But the top two behind Puka and Adams are Tutu Atwell and Jordan Whittington. And so for me, Whittington like has to be in the slot to work, to do it, to be on the, why else is he on the field? Like that's the role that he thrives in. And Tutu is like, the only way that he works is with pre-snap motion stuff to get him free releases because he weighs 165 pounds or whatever. And he can't beat press coverage without that. And he's been really efficient with that, but like, that is how Sean McVay uses Tutu.
Sure.
And then Puka is also kind of that guy. Like they do a lot of pre-snap motion and stuff with Puka to get him. He's not lining up at the X. He's like doing a lot of Z and stuff like and slot work and stuff like that. So I like the idea of like Sean McVay likes to be creative with his usage and move guys around and Davante can do that, and can be effective when doing that. And he's never really had a guy like Davante. So that could be cool.
Yeah.
But who's doing the X role then? Like maybe it doesn't matter so much because we are going to more and more condensed formation. So it's not like,
that's what I was going to say. Sean McVay's all
not every single. Right. Not every single play has got like some just clear, but a lot of McVay plays actually do. That's basically what Demarcus Robinson was doing.
Right.
Who's doing that if it's not Davante? I think
good point.
Those other guys are going to matter for the offense. They really like them. And the only way to use them is this creative pre-snap stuff. That doesn't mean that the role is bad. If this is a high scoring offense, the role kicks ass, dude. Like Demarcus Robinson was like top 8 or something in end zone targets last year. What if you give those to Davante Adams, like he's going to have 16 touchdowns. So like there's a lot of upside for sure. But like if it's Jimmy G and he's in this role, like, oh gosh, I don't want any part of that.
Yeah. If it's Jimmy G, obviously everything changes. We're just hoping that Stafford's back and make it through a season, which is very, at this point, up in the air. Let's just say, I just believe that it's hard to predict injuries. So I'm going to move past that one. I'm good on it.
If we're guaranteed Stafford most of the year, Ladd McConkey or Davante Adams?
Still Ladd for me.
Okay. I think that's where I'm at, but it's honestly a discussion. And so I just want to bring that up. Like if you believe that Stafford's going to be fine, it's massive, massive upside here. If this offense is good.
Yeah. I want to talk about a couple more players. So one thing I think is the Zay Flowers versus Calvin Ridley. I have Flowers a lot higher in my rankings, I think, than you do. And we did originally put Flowers on a breakout show. So I'm curious if you've changed a little bit on Flowers, because to me, the Ridley versus Flowers equation is very similar, but I get one with a proven great quarterback who already has a rapport with my receiver, and I get another with a quarterback with talent, but it could be a really struggling pass game. I don't think either are going to score a lot of touchdowns, Ridley or Flowers. So to me, I'm just taking the bet on the player in the good offense with the rapport with a great quarterback. But where are you at with Flowers? Has he dropped a little bit for you?
I have Flowers at wide receiver 26, which is one spot behind Ridley. I think the median outcome for those two is kind of similar, like you just alluded to. I think that there's an upside case for Ridley that doesn't exist so much for Flowers. Maybe it's like this is a better way to say it. I think that there's like a 25% chance that Ridley gets to this upside case, whereas Flowers, it's like a 5% chance or something like that. And Ridley's upside case is that like Cam Ward is better. than we expect, and the offense is better than we expect. And Ridley is like the alpha target hog, which is something we've seen from him. And he's getting 27% of the targets and nearly 40% of the air yards and like 35% of the red zone and end zone targets. In that scenario, he could like level up as a fantasy producer here in a way that I don't know if Flowers can. For Flowers, his path to upside is like he happens to break a lot of plays for long touchdowns,
Right.
which could happen. He's really good at avoiding tackles. He's really fast. The offense is awesome, and is probably going to score a lot of touchdowns. But yeah, I think really. So what I was going to ask you is like, of these receivers, which do you think scores the most touchdowns? It really wasn't part of it because I think there's a real chance that he could. I think the role will be conducive to him scoring touchdowns. It's all going to come down to how many touchdowns does the offense score. These players,
I also don't view him as much of a touchdown scorer. I think I'm a little bit lower on Ridley than you are now just thinking about it.
He has one of the highest like red zone and end zone target shares of any player over the past 2 years. Yeah, but it's Will Levis and Trevor Lawrence, man. Like
I'm just not sold that Cam Ward is going to be a massive upgrade already in year one.
I'm not either. Yeah, that's totally fair. Like I've tried to make sure I don't steam Ridley too high. So actually I will throw him into this discussion because I think he's really similar to Tetero McMillan in that like I think they're both good players and they could have a role. Like I think Tet's role could be a lot like the role I just described for Ridley.
Yeah.
But it's a concern with the offense and how many touchdowns they'll produce. So who do you think scores the most touchdowns out of Ridley, McMillan, Travis Hunter, Zay Flowers, Garrett Wilson, and Chris Olave?
Oh, I love that one. I would place my money on Ted McMillan.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, we saw it in the preseason.
He's someone I trust to win one-on-one in the red zone.
He's getting the ball before he even turns his head. I would go with Travis just because I think the explosive upside, explosive play upside is there. And I also think that he is someone I would trust to win in the red zone. The catch radius is absurd, and he can just beat somebody in a phone booth. And you get in the red zone, you've got to worry about BTJ. You've got to worry about all the misdirection crap going on with Liam Cohen before the play. I think I would put him first on this list. But I was curious.
I'll say this one real quick. If Travis Hunter meets that expectation, which he certainly could, I thought he was the best contested catch receiver in this class by far. And you could watch the red zone tape with Shedeur Sanders and him at Colorado, and you'll see it. If that happens, my Trevor Lawrence ranking from yesterday will be justified.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I hope it happens. That would be freaking fun.
Yeah,
that would be so fun.
That could be really fun on offense.
Yeah,
could be
for
maybe
sure.
Not.
I mean, dog, the first franchise that me and my brother started on Madden was the freaking Jacksonville Jaguars.
Everyone starts with the Jags. I feel like everyone that doesn't have a diehard fan, that's not a diehard fan of a team. Well, you probably were already with the Chiefs, but
yeah. So I have Travis Hunter, wide receiver 20. Dan is at wide receiver 27. Is that just you don't want to get too out over your skis here with offense, rookie wide receiver, and everything?
I had him higher earlier in the process, so I don't necessarily. It's just that I like the players I have ranked ahead of him mostly. It's Rice, JSN, Flowers, Ridley, McLaurin, Garrett. I recently moved him, but I don't know why I have Garrett there. I need to move. That was a bad move down. I was doing some changes. He needs to be ahead of Garrett for me, so I'd probably have him.
I've never heard anyone call Garrett Wilson by his first name.
Yeah, no, he needs to be ahead of Garrett for me. I'll call
Garrett. Garrett's too high.
There's no way I'm drafting Garrett Wilson over Zay Flowers. So yeah.
All right. Devontae Smith is the last one from this range we haven't talked about. I'm at wide receiver 21. Dan's at wide receiver 28. I think the case for Smith is obvious and easy. Is like he's just really, really good. And if things go the median outcome, he's maybe a slight disappointment at wide receiver 21, maybe closer to wide receiver 28.
Yeah.
But if things go his way, if something were to happen to A.J. Brown, if the team passes more than expected, if he just gets lucky, he's scoring more touchdowns than expected because he could do that. He's really good. Then all of a sudden you've got like a top 15 receiver or more.
Strong case, honestly. It's a really strong case the more I think about it. I feel like to have him at 28 isn't because I don't like him. It's more just I have so many guys that I like and they're all in a very similar range. But with that said, I mean, the case against for me, or just maybe why I have him lower, is just simply Eagles threw for 2,900 yards last year. I know they're expected to throw for more, but I'm not exactly sure what would lead to that because no one could stop their run game and their defense might again be the best in the NFL. It's just young talent meshing together with Vic Fangio. So like, I just don't know where the game scripts are coming. If you look at those second half game scripts, man, I know you've gone over this before on our show, Jacob. I don't know if you have the numbers top of your head, but it's like absurd how few pass attempts the Eagles had in the second halves of games last year, especially in the second half of the season.
Yeah. All right, just real quick on these receivers that I mentioned in terms of like touchdown concerns. I brought this group up because I think that Chris Olave is somebody who we're all
Yep.
terrified of. Maybe there's the concussion concern, but I think mostly it's like this Saints offense could be so bad, man. Like Tyler Shuck, they drafted in round 2 clearly to start, and he couldn't even win the job. So it's like now we're here with Spencer Rattler. Oh my gosh,
baby.
like, and so of course, like everybody's panicked. Dan has him down at wide receiver. Where's Olave? 41.
Which, by the way, is probably higher than consensus still.
That's crazy. Okay, so to me, Chris Olave is one of the best receivers on this list of Tedero McMillan, Travis Hunter, Zay Flowers, Garrett Wilson, and Chris Olave. And I know we're really excited about the rookies, but they're rookies. This guy was a phenom, drafted top 10, just like them. He's in his 4th season. He's proven to us year over year that he can be really productive. When him and Garrett Wilson were on a team together with Justin Fields, Olave was the wide receiver 1.
Right.
Like, he is so good. It's touchdown concern. Because if it's not touchdown concern, why the hell is he so low? Because it's Kellen Moore's offense that always produces a ton of plays, and it's a team that's probably going to be playing from behind a lot. And so, like, I think the target and reception and receiving yardage numbers are going to be fine. He's always been good in that regard. So it's like, well, he might only score 4 touchdowns. How many touchdowns is Garrett Wilson going to score? Everyone has Garrett Wilson ahead of him. How many touchdowns is Zay Flowers going to score? I don't like McMillan and Hunter probably will score more than him, but the Panthers aren't implied for significantly more points than the Saints, I just want to bring that up because it's like, I've got him at 29, wide receiver 29. And as I look at the guys that are directly behind him, it's Ricky Pearsall, it's Emeka Egbuka, it's Roma Dunze, it's Matthew Golden, who you ended up much higher than me on. That surprised me a little bit. It's a bunch of guys we're really excited about. It's so easy to get excited about these guys. It feels terrible to draft Chris Olave ahead of them, right? And you don't have to. Like, to Dan's point, you can a lot of times you can take an Egbuka and then wait a round or 2 to get Olave. But I do think that's where he belongs. I think the talent is just easy, speaks for itself. And I think the touchdown concern is a little overblown because there are a number of guys in this range that bring the same concern.
Yeah, that's all fair. I mean, I drafted Olave in my first auction. It's not that I'm against him, and he goes for
Let's go.
Nobody wants to bid on him.
I talked you into Olave over the offseason.
I like Olave. I still have him ranked in a range where I could get him. Again, like I said, like he went for $4 in the first auction I did. Nobody wanted to bid on him. And I did one of those like 4 as if like the bidding will probably keep going up. And then it just stopped. And there's no interest. And I got it. I'm like, I'll take that. Like that's a value at that point. But obviously the concerns with Olave are going to be the concussions. Fantasy players don't like to get burned by injuries. Like there's always a recency bias when it comes to injuries. If you've been injured lately, you're going to be discounted. If you weren't injured lately, but you had a lot of injuries in the past, people forget about those ones fast. But with Olave, it's been a lot of recent injuries with a concussion. And then obviously the quarterback situation. I'm with you though. It's like, you're right. It's an arbitrage play on Zay Flowers and players like that. Though I do feel like I at least feel confident that Zay Flowers' offense will produce passing yards. That's a struggle for me with Rattler and Chuck. It's just a big struggle for me.
For sure. I'm definitely drafting Flowers ahead of him.
I know you are.
But I think Olave is a much better player. And like the role could be really good. We've seen Kellen Moore really accentuate the strengths of some receivers. And Olave is literally number 1 in yards per out run when used as a pre-snap motion man since entering the NFL among all receivers on routes that came where they were in motion before the snap. That's what Kellen Moore does for his wide receiver 1. We don't know that it will be Olave. Maybe it'll be a mix of guys. That's what he did last year in Philadelphia. He did it with a bunch of guys. But there are ways where he could be really efficient. We'll just have to wait and see. We
forget that he was like one of the most dominant on-film receivers at one point before the concussions. And you won't get a receiver anything like him from a pure talent standpoint in the range he's being drafted. And that's the truth. You won't get anything close, to be quite frank.
I want to talk about Ricky Pearsall. How high is too high for Slick Rick? People are getting very excited.
Yeah.
He comes in at wide receiver 31 in our composite rankings, tied with Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Xavier Worthy, Terry McLaurin, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith are the guys ahead of him. Is there anybody there that's a hard no, like you would never push Pearsall ahead of them?
Good point.
You would not sign off on somebody taking Pearsall ahead of those names.
That's a great question because I think if push comes to shove, I'm taking Pearsall over Garrett Wilson. I know it's crazy, but I don't care. I'm probably taking him over more, even though I may have them ranked slightly below. And that's the funny thing with Pearsall. I just shot when I did my rankings for the show, Jacob. I did a final update. I had my draft last week, and this was an update after that. And I moved Pearsall up a considerable amount. No one moved up more at any position in my rankings than Pearsall across all positions. And I realized, despite having him ranked where I had him before this ranking update, I liked him more than those players. And if push came to shove, I would draft him more. And every auction I'm in, he's a max bid. You can't wait on Pearsall. If you think you're saving your money to get Pearsall, he's still on the board, you're going to be mistaken. You're going to get into a bidding war. He's going to be shot into the price range of George Pickens and those players in that wide receiver 15 range. You got to pay up to get this player. But ultimately speaking, the boom case for Pearsall is absurd. It's through the roof. He's a former first-round pick whose film I absolutely loved at Florida. I know his film earlier in his career wasn't great, and he wasn't, he had injuries. All that is still true of his profile. But the way he fits a Kyle Shanahan offense and the way it mixes with what we saw, his ability to create separation on film, in a lot of ways, he reminded me of a light version of Ladd McConkey and his ability to get in and out of his breaks on tape, but also with the ability to rise above the level and make more plays above his frame, which may or may not come into play in a Kyle Shanahan offense, not as much as other offenses. But if he can do some of the things we've seen him flash, like his ability to just absolutely destroy man coverage at the end of last season, better than any San Francisco 49ers receiver probably since Ayuk, or get better against zone coverage, an area he struggled with his rookie season. And we've seen a little bit of that, signs of that already in the preseason. That route he ran where he sat down in the zone, caught the pass from Purdy, looked really well, really smart on that play. We could be looking at a souped up version of the Ayuk role in this offense. That's how I see it, at least, which is a really, really strong role. That was top 15 scoring in fantasy.
You fine with him ahead of Xavier Worthy? I have him ranked ahead of Worthy.
No, I love Worthy.
Okay, I'm just wondering.
But I'm kind of fine with it.
Well, that's what I'm asking. How far can we take?
I won't do it, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay drafting this guy really high.
You fine with him ahead of Zay Flowers and Calvin Ridley?
The word "fine with it" is sure. I won't do it, but I'm fine with it.
Travis Hunter?
No, not T. Hunter.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Is Hunter.
That's where I draw the line.
Tyreek Hill, Davante Adams.
We didn't even talk about this, but real quick, Jacob, what if what Liam Cohen flashed in that first preseason game before Hunter got hurt is actually what this offense is going to be, which is a ton of design short targets to Travis Hunter, in addition to everything else he'll do? Then it's wow, he's breaking fantasy.
Yeah. All right. It's pretty easy to be excited about Slick Rick. It's going to suck when Big Daddy Juwan comes back and just is the guy that he was last year, just dominates.
If he comes back, what's going on with that?
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, that's where we're at with Ricky, is he looks awesome. And Sky Moore's
no one else there.
Sky Moore's wide receiver too.
MBS.
I want that.
MBS.
All right. Rome Odunze, I think, is a really interesting one. Dan and I in lockstep here. Wide receiver 33.
Yeah.
For each of us, I think he legitimately could be the wide receiver 1 for the Bears. When I cleaned up the per route data, removed screens and all of that, his data looked better than DJ Moore's last year, and that was as a rookie. So really, I think all we need is for Caleb to chill out, and it could be a huge year. I have Matthew Golden. We have Matthew Golden next. I have him at wide receiver 38. You have him at wide receiver 30. We've both been very high on Golden and the potential for him in this awesome offense that designs all of these horizontally breaking routes. It's a perfect fit for his skill set. People have asked about Tedero McMillan. Same thing with him. We're really focused on trying to find fantasy cheat codes. We have a whole episode on that. And one of the things we talked about was horizontally breaking routes. Some coordinators really spam them. Dave Canales is one of them. Every wide receiver he's had, Deontay Johnson, everyone except for Xavier Legette, he's really focused on these routes, and it's a perfect skill set fit for what T-Mac does. Same thing with Matthew Golden. We're super psyched for him. But I'm just worried that it's going to be a run-heavy offense, that there's a 60 or 70% chance that it's just kind of what we saw last year. It could be different, but we don't know. So that's, I guess, why I ended up a little bit low on him. The only guys, so I've got him at 37, sorry, not 38. Jerry Jeudy, Jameson Williams, Xavier Worthy, Rome Odunze, Pearsall, Egbuka, Waddle are the guys that I have ahead of Matthew Golden. The only ones from that range that you have below him are Jalen Waddle, 1 spot below Golden, Emeka Egbuka, 8 spots below Golden. So we basically flip-flopped, you and me, on Egbuka and Golden. I think that's really a hot take. I think you're one of the very few people who have Golden ahead of Egbuka.
Yep.
And Odunze and Jameson Williams and Jerry Jeudy you have below Golden as well. We both have DK Metcalf below Golden for a number of reasons. I'm curious to hear you talk about him compared to Egbuka.
Okay, I want to do that. I do want to come back. I just want to put a pencil in this. We do at some point, I think pin in this. We should at some point come back to the players who are much lower on a consensus. Metcalf, Garrett, Wilson, just discuss a little bit as to why. I just want to throw that there. As far as the Golden hype for me, Golden is, after Pickens, my most loved receiver from a value standpoint. And the reason being, I look at his skill set, and you brought it down a little bit. You brought it up a little bit, I should say. His ability to win on those inbreakers and how it impacts Matt LaFleur's offense. Then I look at some of the stuff I'm seeing coming out of camp. It's not like the it's not the Dan Campbell version of the coach speak. It's the actual coach speak that matches what we see on the field. Packers had their scrimmage. Matthew Golden was the best player out there. The Packers have their practices, their joint practices. Matthew Golden's winning on these in-breaking routes. He's also winning in a variety of ways. The thing that I think we'll notice after we get 4 or 5 games of tape on Golden, and we do this during the year, our Beyond the Box Score, which I'm super excited to actually break down film with you during the year and have observations based on that, Jacob, is that he's going to be much better than people realize at contested catch situations, at plucking the ball out of the air with his hands, and at having strong hands and a high catch rate and a low drop rate. And I think that's going to lead to Jordan Love feeling more confident about him than he ever felt about players like Christian Watson.
He has needed that.
And he's needed that, Jordan Love, to be quite frank. And that he's ever felt about any of these players. Romeo Doubs can do most of that, but he doesn't have the speed and elusiveness to get open in that.
Last year, Doubs was dropping the ball a lot too.
And even he had drops that year. You're right. Yeah. Dontavian Wicks, like Christian Watson just not being able to run a lot of the routes that I think Golden will be able to. It's the perfect prospect for what for what this system wants to do. And it's the best prospect for what Jordan Love has had. And again, I really think the biggest thing that people will notice about him is, wow, this guy's a much better player when it comes to those contested catch situations and at plucking the ball out of the air to maximize yards after the catch. So I just think a pure breakout is happening for him, and I want to get him on a lot of my teams.
I think that Egbuka probably outscores Golden like 70% of the time.
I'll do a BTB bet that I'll take Golden over Egbuka for the year.
That's fine. I'm just talking about range of outcomes. I think it's a lot more likely that he has more points. I think Golden could have the upside case where he's the player we think, he fits the offense like we think that he can, and he performs. But we never have seen him be a target earner at a high rate outside of like a 4 or 5 game sample at the very end of his career, which he was an early declare. So I don't want to be too critical here, but his collegiate data was not anywhere close to where you want it to be. If you look at the round 1 receivers with that type of data, they've almost all been busts. And so he's working against that. He really needs to be an outlier, and he's playing in an offense that's probably going to be pretty run heavy and has a history of rotating receivers and limiting the number of like total snaps and routes that they can get to. That could change a little bit, especially if Jayden Reed is out. They've already got some receivers who are hurt. This is the first round 1 receiver they've drafted. So like that might not apply to Golden, but it does exist as a concern. It's happened with Green Bay receivers basically the whole time that we've seen LaFleur working there. Whereas Egbuka, it just feels so safe, man. Like the offense is good. His role is like easy. It's just like easy looks. What do you mean?
Like, so I've been lower on Egbuka than consensus. And I think part of that reason is, one, I deem the Buccaneers to potentially be have an upgraded defense and be a little bit more run heavy this year. 2, Chris Godwin is not going on the PUP list. He's not going on IR to start the season. I'm not saying he'll play week 1, but he's a lot closer to playing than people realize. So what am I really drafting out of Egbuka? I'm drafting somebody in an offense that is probably going to have 2 players that ultimately will draw targets at a higher rate, unless you think he can out-target either of those 2 players.
So what I meant when I said that his role is easy is it's easy looks, the way that he gets targets.
Okay, that's what you meant. I got you. I thought you meant volume was easy. Okay, my bad.
And to the volume point, I actually think this is a really important thing to bring up. Golden is at like, we're projecting him to have a good role. And that's basically like the best role that he could have, I think.
Okay.
Whereas like if Godwin, who's already hurt, or if Evans, who has a history of being hurt, and they're both aging, if either goes down, that's more targets for Egbuka. If both go down, which we saw last year, Egbuka could have like a 28% target share and a good offense.
Good point. Injuries, he definitely has more to gain. I think that's more toward his upside case, though, for me.
Yeah. So that's just where I'm at. Is like, I guess maybe 70% is too high to say that the likelihood of him outscoring, because like if everybody's healthy, then maybe he's the wide receiver 3 and Golden's the wide receiver 1, you know?
That's my only concern. Yeah. Like, if everyone's healthy with the Bucks,
But
are we going to have to? Yeah. Go ahead.
I do think even if the Bucs defense is better and they do lean more into the run, which could happen, they'll still probably pass more than the Packers.
That's a good point. They're probably right about that.
Yeah. So I think they're really interesting. We've got them at 34 and 34.5 in our composite ranks, right next to each other. I'm very excited to take either or both of them. But it's just
they're really drafted a round or two apart, by the way, too. You can get Golden a lot later. He wasn't steamed up enough this preseason.
Fun debate here. Okay, we can get negative for a moment here.
We have to address why we have these players ranked so low, like Garrett Wilson and DK Metcalf.
I suppose so. I mean, we've done it at multiple stops along the way.
We'll check our busts episode and you'll find that.
Right. Yeah. Jameson Williams, we talked about at the top. DK Metcalf, don't like the offense. This guy has struggled to maximize his opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
And be a wide receiver 1. Like, teams have tried to morph him into that and base an offense around him. And it's been a pretty bumpy ride when that's happened. And now he's here with Aaron Rodgers, who seems like he's very, very like concerned with attention to detail and stuff like that. And really doesn't like when things don't go the way that he thinks that they should. And that just worries me. On top of the fact that this offense might only produce 20, 24, 25 passing touchdowns or something like that.
Sure.
So like if it all works out, he's the wide receiver 1, pretty uncontested wide receiver 1. And maybe the offense breaks to the upside and has 28 passing touchdowns or something like that. And he has a lot of those. And then he's like a low end wide receiver 2 or maybe mid-range wide receiver 2 or something like that. But there's a lot of paths to downside. And Arthur Smith has never produced a good wide receiver 1 in fantasy. Like the absolute best is like AJ Brown as an absolute freaking stud rookie that was just like dominating people who were trying to cover him physically, just like dominant. And Ryan Tannehill actually playing low key at a really pretty high level at that point in his career. Like, and even that wasn't a high end scoring fantasy receiver. It was like a wide receiver 2, mid to low end wide receiver 2. That's kind of what Metcalf is being drafted as. And it's just like, no, thank you. There's a lot of receivers here that I like.
Yeah. So the case you made is all why we're avoiding him. Again, it's team context based. We don't really believe what we see on tape with him. I think DK wins mostly due to size and speed, which can work to some extent. But man, if you can't make it work with Geno Smith, who's really fitting a lot of tight windows and throwing with great anticipation, he's a much better anticipatory thrower than what's left of Rodgers. I hate to say it. There was an old Rodgers, but the film you watch of Rodgers now, really since his final season at Green Bay, is not the same as the old Rodgers. We can't continue to believe it will be. And then the combination of what you said at the end, which is Arthur Smith. It's not good for wide receiver 1s, first of all, his offense. And second of all, this offense in general, I don't think will be very high scoring or have a lot of passing touchdowns. Now, the reason why we could be insanely low on DK Metcalf, Jacob, is the same reason why people were steaming up Garrett Wilson in recent years. Aaron Rodgers has at times leaned on his wide receiver 1. The problem with that theory, though, is just that when he did it, it was with Davante Adams, who he built this insane rapport with over so many reps and so many years. Also in a McCarthy scheme for the most part, which is generally designed, as we've seen in CeeDee Lamb, to get those targets to design one-on-one matchups for your best player. That's not the case for Arthur Smith. So a lot of that I kind of throw out. Now, the other side of it is, well, Aaron Rodgers has worked on his rapport with DK. And if all hits and Aaron Rodgers does lean on DK, we're going to look horrible in this ranking, Jacob, to be honest. Like, upside case, his upside is way higher than 36, but we're kind of putting him between, I think, where his median is and maybe where his where the low side of his projection goes. And we are on the lower side of his projection.
Yeah, I think simply like we do really value upside, and I don't really know if Metcalf gets there. And that's kind of where I'm at with all the guys that were low out, with the exception of Jameson Williams. I think we both acknowledge that there could be an upside case for JMO, but we think it's a relatively low chance of it hitting. There was one more guy. Oh, Garrett Wilson. It's kind of the same thing with Garrett Wilson. It's like, it could be, a 28, 29, 30% target share. And maybe, he's such a good player that he turns that into something pretty good. I mean, DJ Moore with Justin Fields was pretty good for fantasy just 2 years ago, So like, it could be that. And that's the absolute best case. He's like a low end wide receiver 1 or something. Garrett Wilson's good enough to do that. So I don't want to say that you won't or can't get a win at his ADP. But I think there are players in this range that could be like much more than that and don't have as much downside risk. If Ricky Pearsall is a legit like round one talent and the Niners offense is good and just crushes this easy schedule and he has very little target competition, that's like a top 8 fantasy receiver.
Sure.
It really is. Like we saw Brandon Ayuk on a per opportunity basis, like be that. I don't think he's as good as Ayuk, but Purdy is probably better than he was then. And the offense might score more this year. Like with Wilson, I just don't think he can get to the upside you really need to account for the fact that there's a real probability that Justin Fields in this offense produces like 8 games this year where they only have 150 passing yards.
Yeah, that's a strong possibility in addition to such a capped upside from a passing touchdown standpoint. The more I think about this and debate this, Jacob, I actually want to move Garrett Wilson down my rankings even further and move Metcalf up, because at least with Metcalf, it's a similar situation. At least with him, we still have somebody who can throw a football really well. Like Aaron Rodgers has issues, I think, with anticipation and timing now because he's slower in general at processing and he can't move the same way he used to and create that time in the pocket. But he still throws a really good football, Jacob, and specifically in the red zone. I think that's the key area where Rodgers still is attacking early. Like they still had a high pass rate in the red zone last year. Now it's not his offense anymore, but he still threw well in the red zone in those tight areas because he throws a good ball and he has a quick release still. It's not the quickest as it was, but it's quick relative. Now Fields doesn't have any of that. Not good red zone thrower, not a quick release. The slowest release maybe if any starter left in the NFL, him or Daniel Jones. So I almost kind of, even though I had Wilson higher than Metcalf because I believe in the talent so much more, the situation is a lot better for Metcalf. I don't know. I just want to move. I want to note that just going through this in my head. And it's fun to do these exercises, Jake, because you kind of feel out where you have these guys in your rankings and if maybe you should move them a little bit further back or forward.
Yeah, Metcalf's got to convert on those throws. I think Garrett Wilson's so much better. Point. I think Garrett Wilson is so much better as a player right now. All right, we do need to move on, but there you go. That's why we're low on those players. We've got a cool poll in the chat here. It looks like people think we're the most wrong about Metcalf among Garrett Wilson, Metcalf, and JMO. The poll before that was, do you want to draft Chris Olave? 80% no. I believe in you, Chris.
At that price, why not?
Yeah. All right, so a few players that Dan is higher on that I want to consider.
Okay.
Maybe I'm too low on these guys. These are, we're looking at like wide receiver 4 types. Deebo Samuel, probably more like a wide receiver 3 type for him. I think there's upside
higher
there.
all off season on him.
Yeah. Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper. So we've got some vets here, and then we'll get to one younger guy. But let me hear it with Deebo.
Deebo's the one I feel strongest on of anyone you mentioned. We'll talk a little bit about those vets, but Deebo, man, I've been higher all off season on Deebo. I knew I'd be higher when I saw that stupid video going around of him running a route in the spring. He looked completely fine when he actually got his preseason look for the Commanders, and he did exactly what I thought he would do: a design touch, took it around the second level defenders, won the edge, and then cut back. And it's all old Deebo. And I'm higher on him than consensus because I have a strong feeling that he's going to have this easy touch design role. Like you talked about it before when it came to filtering out all of those design plays. Deebo really didn't look good. And even Matt Harmon talks about this on his perception. He doesn't have a great reception perception, Deebo. He kind of never did. He was never good at beating man coverage. I don't care about any of that for fantasy. In a PPR league, what I want is a feeling that you're going to get touches on a weekly basis and the offense is going to be designed to get you the ball. I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to design this offense to get Deebo the ball a lot. And so because of that alone, I believe that where I have him ranked is so much higher than has such a higher percentage and better bet to get a lot of volume than any of the players I have ranked in that range, besides maybe like a Khalil Shakir if he's fine, or Jaden Reed if some injuries happen around there, or Josh Downs if Warren goes down. But I don't need to if and for Deebo. I think he's just going to get that volume immediately.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll take you through my rankings and my thought process on Deebo. After I want to hear about Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper. Are you drafting these guys, or am I just like too low and you didn't mean to be high?
Well, I will draft Keenan Allen. I kind of want Keenan Allen because I think Keenan Allen has the rapport already with Herbert built in. And this is obviously for PPR leagues. Let me be clear. And this is obviously, we're talking about your last round pick or your second to last spot on your team. But I'll take him over the upside guys, knowing that he actually will have a role with a built-in rapport and could be sneakily like that guy can fit into my lineup in PPR.
Yeah. I think Allen, of the 3, from everything I've dug into, is giving us the fewest signals of being toast. Whereas like Amari kind of clearly looks like he is. And then
I
like
push back a little on Amari because Amari's tape with Cleveland last year, and I will say, to be clear, I'm only judging this on one game against the Giants in week 3, but I did watch that tape extensively. He looked good on that tape, and I know when he went to Buffalo it was bad, but he also didn't know the offense at all.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Like his data with Cleveland wasn't anything super encouraging, but it was better than the Buffalo.
Yeah.
Deebo, last year was really bad in everything you look at. Maybe it's basically just like, can he bounce back? Was it injury and stuff like that? It's kind of like the Tyreek Hill bet,
Sure.
He's proven to us before that he's a true outlier, like a true elite talent. Deebo Samuel, we've seen that earlier in his career. He's not even as old as Tyreek Hill. So I'm comfortable betting because I think the fit is good. If I can share my screen here, I'll show you where I've got him. Wide receiver 40 we've talked about a lot of these guys, Jameson Williams, Jerry Jeudy, DK Metcalf, Matthew Golden, and our boy Josh Downs just ahead of him. Dan has to do it every show. One guy just break my heart, has Josh Downs down at wide receiver 47.
Not based on the talent.
So that's where I'm at with Deebo. I think he's a totally fine pick. I think if you are building a Rashee Rice team, or if you just feel like you need help at wide receiver early on, I'm fine moving him up into the range Dan has him at wide receiver 35. I think what you laid out is a good case.
Sure. Who else stood out to you on this list? So do you want to talk Downs a little bit?
We talk about Downs every episode, it feels like. I think that this is, if you can land him in this range where I have him, like if you guys know me and I love this guy to death, and still he's at wide receiver 39 behind DK Metcalf and Jeudy and players like that. So I hope that's just like a bit of caution for you not to get too excited. But when you get him at wide receiver 4, that's a gift. Maybe he does turn into the stud that we know he is. He's the prince that was promised. We'll see. But I don't think you need to reach for him. The last guy that I noticed that you were significantly higher than me on was Mr. Keon Coleman.
Oh, yeah.
I'll quickly just mention why I'm nervous about Keon Coleman. 27 spots is the difference in our ranking here.
That's hilarious.
I'm at 64, which basically just means that I'm not drafting him. I'm going to tell you why I'm worried about him for fantasy. Then I want to hear what you think about Keon. And then I want to talk about some guys that I'm considering over him that I think are similar bets. So Coleman, to me, it's all about the fit. We need him to be doing more than just the X receiver stuff, but I don't know if we're going to get that. And if you look at, he had a freaking average depth of target of 15 yards last year. If you look at the players who have had that, like historically, it's very, very hard to be productive. Only I think it was 7 or 8% of them have averaged more than 15 PPR points per game. And so when we're talking about this range, where he's in the same range as Jameson Williams, Egbuka, and players like that, I have a really hard time getting there, even while conceding that Coleman could have a 12 touchdown season. That definitely could happen. To me, he's more of a best ball pick. It's kind of like your Kelsey case where it's he could, fall into this many touchdowns, and he could. But to me, Coleman's maybe the best part of his game is that he can be so physical winning the catch point and then go create after that. But he just doesn't get to do that outside of improv plays with Josh Allen that are good when they happen. But there's only, a handful of them all season, 10 all season where that happens and he gets a look. I want him to be getting layup looks in the slot. And I just think there's too many other players they want to feature in that way. Yeah. And I just don't think I would ever feel comfortable starting Keon Coleman.
It's a strong argument you make. He's not going to be the power slot we want him to be, that Rashee Rice is. And that's the role that leads to the volume. But I know, just going through our rankings and talking to you about fantasy now for a summer, Jacob, and just at length, we've been talking for years now, I'm always going to be higher on these touchdown guys than you are. Same thing happened to me with Henry last year, where I was so high on Derrick Henry versus consensus. I know that it's unpredictable, and I know that touchdowns have the most regression of any stat that we can chase. And I know we will all want to chase the high volume guys and the roles in the offense, but ultimately touchdowns are worth so much in this game we play. And they decide so much of what ends up happening. Why was James Cook so good last year, the touchdowns? Why was Terry McLaurin so good last year? It certainly wasn't the volume and the role in the offense. It was almost all the touchdowns. They decide years, and Coleman to me is a really strong bet in this range of receivers to score a lot of touchdowns and to be featured in that red zone role in the offense. I know Dalton Kincaid is somebody who we also think could get in that role. Dalton Kincaid's been hurt a lot in his career and just hasn't played the role that everyone wants him to. In addition to that, I think that Keon Coleman is going to be on the field a lot more than a player like Dalton Kincaid, even in the red zone, where I don't think Kincaid will get every snap. Coleman will. He will have those isolated looks on the outside. And when you're playing a Josh Allen offense in the red zone, more so than any team in the NFL, I would argue, Jacob, you need to be allocating defenders in the box because Josh Allen is a weapon in his own right to run when he's in the red zone, and they can also hand it to Cook or whoever's in at running back. So with more guys allocated in the box, Coleman will have a lot of these one-on-one looks on the outside in the red zone, more so than almost any X receiver, I think, in the NFL. There's going to be a lot of opportunity, and everything I've seen out of Bills camp has been super, super, super happy, like super, super exciting about Keon Coleman. Dave Richard was at Bills camp, and Dave Richard has called Keon Coleman his number one breakout for this year because of what he saw at camp, the rapport and the red zone role. And so I'm looking at double-digit touchdowns for Coleman. And in that scenario, I don't need him to do too much more from a volume standpoint to pay off this ADP.
I mean, double-digit touchdowns is a lot. He basically has to get there. That's the thing. So do you think that his average depth of target will drop in a significant way?
I think so. I think it was kind of weirdly high last year. I don't think it can be that high.
15 is extremely high.
Yeah.
What I looked at, I referenced earlier, where it's like a 7% hit rate gets the 15 PBR points or more, was an average depth of target of 14 or higher, which is still really, really high. It's just my concern, man. I bring this up quite as much as I can on the podcast because I think it's relevant. I think people have a tendency to get enamored with cool players. And often those are the guys who are typecast into this kind of a role where they're asked to go win down the field because they can. But on a game-to-game basis, and even over the course of a full season, it's really hard to get the targets that are necessary to be fantasy relevant. You have to be Justin Jefferson type of a player, Nico Collins type of a player.
You're saying from the outside role, from the boundary, right?
Yeah. Yes. And to me, Keon Coleman is like, I guess you could say he's in that vein, but he's like 50% of Nico Collins. Fair. He has the quarterback to help him there. But at the same time, Josh Allen has not been quite as bad as Patrick Mahomes, but he hasn't been very accurate throwing down the field lately, even from a clean pocket.
True.
That's just objective data, charting data. Are you going to be comfortable starting Keon Coleman? Like, are you going to go into the year just start him?
As comfortable as I would be starting player, and the only player we haven't talked about him, we'll talk about later, but as comfortable as I would, and that was Judy, but the comfortable as I would be starting like an Olave, a Shakir is like for PPR, I guess you can feel a little bit more comfortable if he's on the field just because there's more of a floor. But him and Downs are players that I'm not as sold on their volume. To me, Coleman was clearly a very good prospect when you watch his tape at Florida State. I know he didn't run a good 40 time, but if you could see it in the gauntlet drill, which he ran faster than any player at the combine, he is good at creating separation over the middle of the field. Can he start to work in those deep ends? Can they start to work in those deep ends and those in breakers with him? That's the question. And the question is, does Joe Brady evolve his offense at all? If it's the same offense as last year, which worked for the Bills, he probably won't return value on where I have him ranked. I'm willing to accept that. I just think he's a good enough prospect that they can evolve the offense to feature him more.
I just have such a hard time with the targets. So the players that I want you to consider that I think are similar types of profiles.
Okay.
In that you're probably going to be relying on big plays and touchdowns because we don't know if they'll have enough target floor week to week or even ultimate target upside over the course of a full season. The first one, super fun, on our thumbnail today, Isaac Tesla. I think that Isaac Tesla is basically the same role as Keon Coleman. He probably is. The way that he wins, the way that he gets targets. What is the best possible target share for Keon Coleman in your mind?
Well, at least he's starting and playing every snap. Like with Tesla,
they traded Tim Patrick, man. They traded Tim Patrick to clear a spot for him.
Yeah, but we know that passing offense is going to go through Brown, it's going to go through Laporta, and it's going to go through Gibbs before it goes through him, at the very least.
Okay, right? Well, that's different than what you just said. And
Okay,
that's what I
my bad.
originally did want to talk about was the target share numbers. So like how high
with
do you
Coleman.
think Keon Coleman could get to? Because I think Detroit will probably pass as much, if not more,
Yeah,
than
probably
the Bills.
more. You're right. I see the point you're trying to make, that despite Coleman being higher on the target totem pole in Buffalo, it may end up being a similar target share overall. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I don't
Okay.
even like, even though he might be higher on the target totem pole, there might be like so many more names on that Bills,
Right.
team that like, how high will it really be? Like 17, 18% or something like that?
It's fair.
To me, like maybe this is ridiculous. Keon Coleman was the 33rd overall pick, but I think Tesla is as good of a talent. I know that this is really early to be saying this, but I just freaking loved his film. I was so blown away by what he can do athletically. He's bigger and he plays in an offense that could be really good. And he, like I made this point a few times, has the contingent upside where what if something does happen to Amari St. Brown? I don't think it will, because
Right.
he's a warrior. He never misses time. What if Jameson Williams gets hurt or something like that? And then all of a sudden Tesla's in this like really expanded role. And I do think it's like really relevant that, for all the things we've talked about with the Keon Coleman camp buzz and drumbeat and everything, that all applies here too. They traded multiple picks to move up and get him, paid an exorbitant cost to go get Isaac Tesla and reach compared to where he was expected to go in the draft. And then it's been only good things since then. They talk about how much they love him all the time. And he comes in and freaking lights it up during preseason, and they trade away Tim Patrick. And it's like, that's a really strong and compelling signal that the team likes him a lot. And it's not just the receiving stuff, it's the blocking and all that too, where it's like, this to me just looks like a real player. It looks like just a steal. And he's a freaking 6'5" mega athlete.
The case is strong. I mean, the case is strong for his role eventually in offense. I just, redraft wise, I'm just struggling to find like how he scores his fantasy points right away. And maybe that's a struggle for you with Coleman more than me, which is fine. I totally get that. But Coleman to me still has so much more touchdown upside than a guy like Tesla.
I mean, all I see Tesla do is score touchdowns, brother. He's crazy.
I know, but he actually has people who scored touchdowns within his offense. Who scores touchdowns for the Bills in the passing game?
That's true. St. Brown hasn't been playing this preseason.
Right.
I do have such a hard time with Coleman, and it's for this reason.
I understand.
Because you can get Tesla cheaper. I know he's pushing up boards, but you can get a lot of these guys. I'll bring up some other names that are kind of similar in the way they score their points for cheaper. And part of the reason for that is, and I don't want to discount this and just assume that I'm right, a lot of really smart people think that this is the year for Keon Coleman, right? We've heard that. We had him on the Super Show where we had a bunch of analysts come in. Numerous people talked about Keon Coleman. Dave's talking about it. You're talking about like, I think that there might be something here that I'm missing. But just like the math side of things does wig me out a little bit here, where it's like, I just don't get it.
It's a fair critique. I think maybe we're banking too much on that we like the talent and we like the situation. But the problem is, the situation seems good on paper, but maybe it's not actually as good as it seems. Like, wow, you get a Bills receiver who could be their number one red zone target, and they don't really have any great receivers. That's awesome. That should be ranked high in fantasy. But then when you break it down the way you did, it does give me more caution.
Yeah. All right. The other guy I wanted to compare him to, and this is a weird one because he's not like the size speed freak like Tesla and Keon.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not speed so much with Keon.
Yeah.
It's Darnell Mooney, who is back at practice today.
Yeah.
Looking like he might be ready for week 1. So I bring him up because he's another guy who gets a bunch of downfield targets, but he ultimately has a capped target ceiling unless something were to happen to Drake London. I think his target share could push higher than Coleman's, but there's also like way more touchdown upside in Coleman's offense. Coleman has a bigger role in the red zone. So it's not a perfect fit, but it's like kind of a wide range of outcomes guy who can get there through big plays. For Coleman, it's more like big plays as in 6 points on a touchdown. For him, it's more like 5 plays on a 40-point reception, Darnell Mooney, you have at wide receiver 50, which is a lot lower. The news came in pretty much right when we were starting the podcast. I have him at 53. I think I'm going to move him up. Do you have any thoughts on Mooney? Like if he's there in week 1, who are you taking for the whole year, Coleman or Mooney?
I'm still taking Coleman. I
Yeah.
have different expectation for Coleman. Even though you made a strong case, I think he could be a bigger part of the offense, which would help him from a target volume standpoint. With that said, I am also going to move Mooney up my rankings. I liked where I had him, but this was with the injury in mind. Same thing goes for Shakir, by the way, who has been kind of pummeling down who's been kind of pummeling Khalil Shakir. I almost got that wrong. Who's been kind of pummeling down rankings. And now it's like, oh, wait, he might play week 1. So, and is actually expected to play week 1. I think both are, right? Mooney and Shakir. So I think I'll probably move them both up a little bit, though. I don't really want to take him over Jordan Addison. I'll tell you that. Or Jaden Reed or my boy Christian Kirk. We have to get to Kirk at some point because I'm super high on him.
Sure. Yeah. Jaden Higgins is the last one I wanted to bring up as a stylistic comparison.
We have him ranked way higher than consensus, you and I.
Matt actually compared Higgins to Keon Coleman in his reception perception profile. Because I remember almost throwing up in my mouth when I read it because I really liked Jaden Higgins. When I watched Higgins, I was like psyched. I thought that he could maybe develop into a wide receiver 1. And then I read that and I was like, yeah, Matt knows more about, scouting receivers than I do. Dang it. But yeah, I think it's like if the offense is good and produces a lot of passing touchdowns and passing volume, which we've talked about, it could end up being a similar type of upside to the Bills offense. I think the Bills will probably produce more touchdowns, but we could see more total volume in Houston. Most likely the Bills will just be a better passing offense, I think, I think it's totally fair to say. But we know with Stroud, there is big upside here. And Higgins has the big body and can win in similar types of ways. Could be a guy who kind of Jordan Addison's his way into 10 or 12 touchdowns if the offense is great, and everybody's worried about Nico Collins. And he's just a mismatch in the red zone. So you have him a lot lower than Coleman. I have him higher than Coleman. I'm at wide receiver at 50. With Jaden Higgins, you're at wide receiver 55.
Yeah, just the situation of having Nico Collins already on the roster, rotating snap Xavier Hutchinson versus Coleman, who doesn't have a Collins on the roster for me at least, and is not rotating, is going to get all the snaps.
Okay, I just don't think it's relevant that he doesn't have a Nico on the roster because I don't think his target share can be higher than like 20% because of the role that he plays.
Target share, sure, but touchdowns. Again, I know I'm chasing something that we tend to, as fantasy analysts, advise not to chase, but in the same time, when you my mind at least, when you overinflate or underinflate, I should say, the importance of touchdowns and how hard they are to predict, it takes away a big chunk of, like, that's what happened with Derrick Henry last year, in my opinion, why he was ranked so low. And same thing with Saquon Barkley, among others. Those are just the top end range examples. Coleman's more of a bottom end range of that.
I just thought of another one who's a good comparison for how he might score points this year, and it's kind of breaking my brain, but it's Cooper Kupp. Like he needs touchdowns. Like he could have the Travis Kelce season that you've described, where he just
Kupp with touchdowns. Yeah,
I think he'll be
one's playing with a great offense, the other's playing in not a great offense.
We'll see, man. Clint Kubiak cook. Don't sleep on Clint. I think he's the guy in the red zone for the Seahawks this year, if I had to guess.
Can I ask one player? Can we talk about one player, or do you want something? I wanted to.
I was going to Kirk, but is that who you're talking about? Yeah. Let's talk about Kirk.
I just don't understand his consensus ranking and his ADP throughout the entire offseason. And I noticed, like, you're also lower on him, and I think you're actually a little higher than some are. But I've always had him around this 42, 40, 41, 43 range. Mm-hmm. I'm getting a player on an offense I think A, is going to pass an insane amount, could be one of the top 5 passing volume in the NFL. B, has a quarterback who can throw the ball to all 3 levels with velocity, anticipation, and ball placement. 2, is getting all of the snaps in wide receiver 2 sets and all of the snaps in wide receiver 3 sets. Will probably move from the inside to the outside. Potentially could be filling the role of Tank Dell that we were saying, oh, Jalen Noel. No, maybe it's just Christian Kirk. I don't really understand why nobody wants Christian Kirk. I'm very confused about the Kirk situation with those things in mind. Am I putting too much influence on the situation, and is the player just not good enough to make up, like, to return value despite having all of those other things working in his favor?
It's tough to say. How old is Christian Kirk? I feel like he started to slow down a little bit. He's probably like 28 or something like that. Yeah, he's 28. He'll be 29 this year. Okay. So I do worry about that a little bit. My comparison, like him and Jalen Noel, I think they're similar players. And if I had to guess, Jalen Noel is going to have significantly more juice. But Kirk will definitely, out the gate, it appears, have like the role that you just outlined. I would be shocked if Jaden Higgins isn't taking at least some of those wide receiver 2, like 2 wide receiver set snaps from him by the end of the year. And I think it's possible that if Higgins and Noel both play well, that's by far the most explosive grouping, is to have those 2 out there with Nico Collins. And it's like, good luck dealing with these guys. I don't want to, we don't know. We don't know what will happen in a rookie receiver's year. It's easy to just get kind of buried on the depth chart. Christian Kirk has been a very solid player throughout his career. He could have that role that you just outlined pretty much the whole time, in which case it'll be a pretty clear win. Maybe even a kind of big win, I think of him as a small win player in my mind, but if Houston passes a lot, if he keeps his role all year, he could outscore Jalen Waddle, right? He could be in this range. It wouldn't shock me at all if he outscores Rome Odunze or whatever. Emeka,
especially if their passing volume is as high as it could be.
Right. Yeah. No, he could outscore Davante Smith. That wouldn't surprise me. If he keeps that role all year and the passing volume is high and Davante is just both Dallas Goedert and AJ Brown are healthy all year and the team runs a lot, Christian Kirk could definitely outscore him. That's totally realistic. But I don't ultimately think he's pushing much higher than that, which is
fair.
We said earlier with Davante, wide receiver 28 is probably about fair. If it's median outcome, things don't go his way. That's not that exciting to me. It's a good hit, but I do think Juwan Jennings could be a top 12 fantasy receiver if he comes back and is healthy, There's other Chris Godwin, man. He was wide receiver 2 last year when he was healthy. Don't expect that we'll be there, but you never know. If some of these guys we talk about, like Keon Coleman or whatever, if they pop off for 10 or 12 touchdowns, they could be a top 15, 18, 20 fantasy receiver. If Luther Burden gets the role in Chicago, he could be really, really productive. That's the only thing for me with Kirk is he takes a roster spot and he takes a draft pick. And I would rather just go for more upside unless I need him. If I need a stabilizer at the beginning of the year, if I've got Rashee Rice or whatever, then sure, I'm totally content taking him.
Yeah. So that's my case for him. It's a lot team-based, context-based, but I'm in on that personally. All right. Any other receivers down there that we want to get to?
I think at this point, we just talk about our favorite late round upside swings and call it a day here. I think we've done a great job covering the wide receiver position. We're going to send out producer Josh made a graphic that has our entire composite top 72 wide receivers. We'll put that. I doubt they'll be able to see it on the YouTube screen, but we'll put it on Twitter. So you'll be able to find that there. And then I'll be sending out a rankings update tomorrow in the FFT newsletter. This one has to work. Oh my gosh.
We're also hitting listener questions as well.
For sure. But yeah, to wrap up with wide receivers here, Tesla is one of my favorite late round upside swings. We've hit on that. Darnell Mooney as well. Going to push him up the board for sure. Yes, I think Kyle Williams for the Patriots is really interesting. He and Luther Burden are two players that are buried on their depth chart for now. You're almost definitely going to be able to pick Williams up, maybe Burden too, when people drop them or just don't draft them. But it is realistic that either of these rookies could push into near wide receiver 1 status for their team. That sounds crazy, but there's definitely target ambiguity that exists in Chicago. New coaching staff here, no clear alpha receiver, and there's no clear alpha receiver in New England. Maybe that's Stephon Diggs, but if he doesn't have it anymore, I think once the cat's out of the bag with Kyle Williams, it's okay, yeah, that guy's open. That guy's open. He's still open. Every play he's open. That could happen. And Luther Burden could be the stud that Ben Johnson called, if he ends up playing his way into earning the trust that Johnson wants from him, then all of a sudden, it could be a really, really fruitful fantasy role. So those are just two surprisingly high upside guys for the late rounds to keep an eye on. And then Jalen Coker, of course, he's our guy. Yeah. Tiny sample size, but wide receiver 1 in yards per catchable target versus man coverage last year. Really obscure stat from Fantasy Points data that I dug up just for the cokeheads. Really good player. Love his film. And the fact that they were willing to move on from Adam Thielen, who we both agree has been a really good player over the last couple of years. That's not something you just do, right? If you're an NFL team, you got a young quarterback like Bryce who has shown some rocky starts here, you want to support him with that veteran receiver. But the fact that they're willing to move on, I do think speaks volumes about the confidence in Jalen Coker, who has made the most of every opportunity. Last guy I'll throw out, don't forget how good Brandon Ayuk was. I don't have any idea where he'll be, but easy schedule for San Francisco this year. If Ricky Pearsall isn't able to be the guy that we think he is, if Juwan Jennings doesn't come back or has, it continues to be an issue with the calf or whatever, Ayuk has been a truly special player on a per route basis, on film, everything that you want. Having such a talented route winner at the X receiver spot for this offense, like unlocks things for this offense. And so if he comes back and is that type of player, that could be huge. And he's free in drafts. I know he got steamed way up after his 2023 season because he was so good. And you have all the nerds talking about the per route data and everything. And then he was terrible. Do you remember the start to last year? He had the slow start because of the holdout, and then he kept freaking dropping balls and stuff. He was still wide receiver 1 in average separation score per fantasy points data. So like he was really good, even with the slow start, recovering from, not getting the reps that he needed leading up to the season. Just don't count him out. If he's free, if you can get him for cheap, he's worth a stash if you can stash him. Do you have any upside guys you wanted to throw into this conversation here?
Yeah, I mean, you threw a bunch out. The one that, Torrey Horton's a guy that I think will be potentially that number 1 waiver claim very early in the season. But out of the players you mentioned, the one that I'm circling, with what?
I'm just psyched about Torrey Horton. I almost forgot.
Yes.
You didn't have him in your top 60, and I was like, that's got to be an oversight.
It was an oversight. We'll call it an oversight.
Good.
But out of the ones we mentioned, Coker is easily my number 1 play of all those, and the guy I target at the end of drafts because of what you said. They moved Adam Thielen for a reason. They want to get these young receivers looks, and they believe in him. And Coker's behind the Coker's numbers, the data on Coker is amazing. Just love the idea that he's going to play that slot role there.
Yep, for sure. We love Torrey Horton. We don't know exactly what the role will be, but if you look at the Seahawks offense,
right,
it's all about the play action game, selling the run to unlock deep passing and intermediate passing. And that's what it's been for Clint Kubiak when it's been successful. He made Marquez Valdes-Scantling look pretty good last year with the New Orleans Saints. Clint Kubiak did. They just cut MVS this year. They're like, we don't need you. This rookie's really freaking good. And he is. He's a route winner. He's healthy. And he was unbelievably good at the collegiate level. It was just a question of, is he going to be healthy? He looks electric out there so far in the preseason from what we've seen. And I think that they're going to have to get him on the field. The only concern I have is this offense, the Seahawks will probably have the lowest rate of 3+ receivers on the field of any team.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to come at the expense of Cooper Kupp. Could happen. Maybe Kupp's washed. Maybe you don't know. Like maybe Kupp's washed.
Schematically speaking, they're harder to defend with Horton's speed on the field than Kupp, I think at least.
A couple other guys I want to mention that were in my top 60, 70-ish that weren't, that Dan didn't have, that we didn't get. If you look at the consensus rankings, they won't be on there. One is Tyquan Thornton, which was the opposite. Dan had him and I didn't. And I think that's a decent shout. I think he could surprise people early in the year, and he's completely free. Keandre Lambert-Smith, basically free as well. I mentioned earlier that actually, no, I think that was the other podcast I did. I had too much work during this draft season. Keandre Lambert-Smith stepped into the X receiver role for Quentin Johnston when Quentin Johnston had a concussion during the preseason. And Justin Herbert was like throwing him balls on the sideline with anticipation where it's like, if you don't get here, this could get picked. And Justin Herbert is super risk averse. So like to me, seeing that was a real signal and is very exciting. They've been wanting to get Trey Harris in this Z role where he's the flanker. He's moving around more. They've used him a ton in pre-snap motion. And so it seems like they're just playing different positions. And as much as you and I like Trey Harris, we've had to back off on our Trey Harris love for draft season because it's like, how does he even get on the field? He's like behind Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen if this is his role. So keep an eye on Keandre Lambert-Smith because I think he's probably just outright better at wide receiver than Quentin Johnston is right now. And if he gets on the field, man, I want to take shots on guys who get to play with Justin Herbert and are free. Marquise Brown could play a meaningful role. We don't know what he has left, but he could play a meaningful role
been injured
early
a lot
on.
in camp. That's hurt him.
Pat Bryant for the Broncos, I really like.
Great tape at Illinois.
Yeah. Jalen Lane for the Commanders he's got the juice, man. He is he's a really interesting one here who might have to play a role early on. We'll see. They took him in round 3.
Early draft capital. Yeah.
It's been an up and down preseason, but the ups are pretty enticing. Malik Washington, I freaking love this guy.
I used to like him.
Yes.
A draft prospect out of Virginia, that little slot. Yeah.
Yes. And he can win down the field too. He's not just a manufactured touch guy, but it looks like he's won the wide receiver 3 role. And I think he's the clearest beneficiary.
For the Dolphins, by the way, just for people listening.
Yes, good call. He's the biggest beneficiary of the Jonnu Smith trade. I think he will get a lot of these manufactured touches. And if either one of those receivers in front of him get hurt, or if Tyreek has any weirdness, who knows, like what's going on with him these days, I think Malik can step in and be a productive player. So he's another guy that's just totally free in drafts. Alec Iomanor for the Titans. All he has to do is beat out Van Jefferson. And he's the starting X receiver on this team with Cam Ward and a pretty solid offensive line. We're pretty bullish on the coaching and everything that could be, materializing for this offense. I thought he's looked pretty good this preseason. They tried to give him a lot. They put a lot on his plate to see what he could do. And for comparison, somebody like Dante Thornton for the Raiders had the same thing where it's like, can he pass the test? Thornton had a really, really nice touchdown catch at the end of the preseason. But other than that, there were some really bad reps. I thought Yamana played pretty well. I just butchered that name. So he's the last one I want to mention. Do you want to shout out Roman Wilson and then we'll get out of here?
I've been lower on Wilson. I saw some bad stuff from the camp. I was higher on Wilson. So the end of camp wasn't good, though. I still think he'll have a nice role there. And I did like his college tape in Michigan, but I'm off Wilson train. All right. If you're watching on YouTube, stick around. We're going to do what we said. A little bit of auction stuff and then some listener questions from iTunes if you left a review. If you're listening to the audio, be on the lookout on Friday for that, for the audio. So if you're watching on YouTube and you're waiting for it to drop in our podcast feed, that's then. And we're going to go to break real quick here, and then we're going to come back with some more auction talk and listener questions.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake,
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Get ready.
Wait a second. I thought we were going tubing.
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Knuckles are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And everyone loves it.
Every adventure.
Just try to keep up.
Every face-off.
This ends now.
And every moment that will have you saying,
Where have you been? My entire life!
It's showtime!
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and the entire Sonic universe are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
The crowd loves champions. Gladiator 2 is an epic spectacle.
Remarkable!
To amuse you is my only wish. The glory is yours, not mine. Very good. Gladiator 2, rated R. Now streaming.
Critics are buzzing about the new season of Yellow Jackets.
This is not healthy.
Yellow Jackets' new season now streaming on the Paramount Plus with Showtime plan.
Welcome back. This is Beyond the Box Score. And today we are going to be breaking down a salary cap auction draft of mine, my home league, a $200 salary budget, redraft Superflex. I want Jacob to critique my team. I want to go over really interesting observations I had from this specific auction cap draft on every position, flow of players, and how it can impact your Superflex drafts and how it can help you prepare for yours. Also, a few other drafts, a non-Superflex auction we can potentially tap into just to see some pricing, and then a Superflex 10-teamer, which I think plays a big difference in the pricing for quarterbacks. So let's first add to stage this draft here. Maybe I can do a little zoom action on this so the listeners can get a better look at this bad boy and see some of these teams here. But yeah, Jacob, do you have access to this? Can you see the draft that I have here, or is this bad podcasting?
Yeah, I can see it. And yeah, excited for this little bonus episode for the BTB listeners. We made it through, Dan. We did 3 ranking shows. They're all about 2 hours long. We talked about freaking 60 receivers or something. So it feels good. It feels good to have arrived here. Happy Friday to everybody listening on the audio side of things. And we're looking forward to some really, really fun shows next week to close things out here on draft season. What a time.
It does feel really good. And we're also going to do what we said today, which is get to listener questions, which are really important for me to answer all your questions that you left on iTunes. So remember, if you leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes and Spotify, we will work through the season and answering your questions. But I wanted to make sure we got a good slew of questions answered before this draft weekend. So that's why we include that today. But let's first take a look at this salary cap draft, 200 budget redraft, super flex, half PPR, Jacob, with 2 receivers starting, 2 running backs, 2 flexes, and a super flex. And so here's a look at my team, and I'll get your opinion on it in a second. Jared Goff at $24, Sam Darnold at $11.
What am I looking at? You drafted Jared Goff and Sam Darnold. This can't possibly be a Dan Schneider team.
So this is what we'll be talking about. The situation of the quarterbacks, the dire situation, how I misread the room at quarterback, and how that played out till the end of the draft, and maybe a tale of, a cautionary tale for those of you who tried to play the strategy I played, which is to spend less at quarterback. Obviously, I was targeting Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams and Stroud in that tier, but I thought they would go cheaper, and they never did. Pricing never dropped. Here's the key takeaway I want to, before we start this, Jacob. If you're playing in a super flex league and it's an auction, if you want to spend less at quarterback, make sure it's a 10-team league where only 20 are starting on a weekly basis. In that format, I was able to get CJ Stroud at $9, Caleb Williams at $9, and this was back on August 10th. So at the time, I drafted Richardson as my QB3, thinking he was going to start over Jones. But those were the prices I paid. I paid $2 for Richardson, $9 for Stroud, $9 for Caleb. In a 12-team Superflex auction, you better not expect there to be a drop-off in the pricing at quarterback, especially if your league is on the smarter side and they're more willing to spend on quarterback threes for their bench, understanding the importance of that position. Because that's exactly what happened on players like Darnold, on players like Bryce Young, and all those that bottom tier quarterback. They all were getting juiced up into the teens, $11, $12, $13. And there was no drop off for Stroud, Lawrence, players who are ranked in that QB 20, QB 19 range that I like above that ranking. Jacob, as if you look back on our quarterback show, you can see it was such flat pricing at quarterback versus the 10-team auction I was in. There was a steep drop off at some point at quarterback. And that's just the difference. Look, you're starting 24 guys in a 12-team versus 20 in a 10-team super flex. And that QB3 position was very valuable to many players. I mean, look, if you're drafting in a 10-team super flex, everyone can get a third QB. If you're drafting in a 12-team super flex, not everyone can get that third QB. So it changes the market pricing. So be careful at quarterback. I would say whenever there's a value that appears at quarterback at any point in your auction drafts and super flex 12-team, take it. Don't say I'm going to be able to pay cheaper later and I'll use that money elsewhere. You're not going to be able to pay cheaper later. So anyway, Jacob, that explains what happened at quarterback. I have Barkley at $38, James Cook at $20, CeeDee Lamb at $41, Zay Flowers at $12, Brock Bowers at $21. This is what I wanted to go to next, Jacob. What happened with Brock Bowers? So let me share a screen here because I think this is a really important. We'll come off this one for a second. I'm going to share another screen here, but I think this is stop screen share. Sorry. I'm not usually the guy who does this. So I'm trying to understand the technical side here.
Brock Bowers at basically the same price as James Cook. So just think about that one. We all have like ADP in mind. That's like a full 2-round difference between those two. He was like almost half the price of CeeDee Lamb and Saquon Barkley, which those are round 1 picks, but Bowers is like a mid-round 2, late round 2 pick. And to get him for half the price, that is really interesting for sure.
It seems like great value, but I think it's just consistent value with how these auctions have played out. I've been in 5 auctions, really competitive in every single one of them, and we'll go over it in a moment. Bowers and McBride are just not coming off the board for a price anywhere priced in the range where we have them ranked for us, Jacob, and not even priced in the range where they come off the board in snakes. I think in auction drafts, drafters are so much more hesitant to build their roster out by paying at the tight end position. I think it makes it in their mind much more difficult to fill a roster out and to budget a roster when you're actually allocating 10% or 13% of your budget to the tight end position versus all these other players, especially in leagues like mine. And this happens in a lot of auction drafts, dude. Pricing falls off at tight ends. We'll go over it in a second, but why tight ends? Kelsey goes off for $5 or $6, right? Laporta is a $5 or $6 player. Tight ends people don't spend on tight ends in auction strategies, but overall, you're still getting what we deem to be one of the better players in the auction. Brock Bowers, probably one of our 15th, 16th best players outside of the quarterbacks at a crazy discount. So we'll look at the actual pricing here on this tab. So this tab is what I projected them to go for and what they actually went for. Josh Allen goes for $4 less than projected, and that's based on past league salaries. Lamar Jackson, 44, Jamar Chase, 42 versus 48, 39 for Jaden Daniels, 42 for Bijan Robinson. We're going to go down this list and see how many players Brock Bowers is cheaper than. Ashton Genty, we start to get into that range. Drake London, 32. I told you, people love him. Went for more than Puka Nakua. We keep going down. Lad McConkey, you're getting Bowers for cheaper than McConkey. All the backs in that range, Bucky and them. Kyron Williams, JSN. We're going down further and further. Devon Achane, Marvin Harrison Jr. for more than Brock Bowers, right? Marion Hampton for more than Brock Bowers. James Cook, he said, was about $1. And we're starting to get into that range where it falls off. But Higgins, still more than Brock Bowers. Ken Walker, more than Brock Bowers. And then we're talking about quarterbacks, which don't factor in as much based on what I discussed before. But this has happened in every auction I've been in. People have just not paid the price, the iron price for tight end. And then McBride comes off the board for typically between $2 and $4 cheaper than Bowers goes for, whatever that may be. So I really think a good edge you can have in your auction drafts is being willing to spend at tight end for one of those two players.
Very interesting. McBride, $17, $14, Garrett Wilson. Like that definitely stands out.
Right. And that's really across the board. That's been the case. And now obviously you can see quarterbacks, there was no drop off. That's kind of how I got caught there at quarterback. I want to stop sharing this screen though and go back to my auction draft real quick. Sorry, that was not the right button. That just took me out of the thing in general. So we'll go back in here. We'll share screen. We'll go back to this. So we round out my team here. CeeDee Lamb, Zay Flowers at $12, Brock Bowers at $21, Pickens and Lamb on the same team. I just couldn't help myself, Jacob. $14 George Pickens, you know me. I got my boy Keon Coleman. I screwed up so bad at quarterback, Jacob, that I had to pair Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson there at the back end. It's very ugly at quarterback 3 for me. Quarterback in general is a disaster zone for me. I totally misread the position. And I think that goes into a lot of the takeaways I want to have. You have to understand your auction and in the flow of it. So as we went back, I don't have that screen in front of me now, Jacob. I just have this screen with all the teams here. But early on, if you notice, as I went over the overall top 150 before, Jacob, a lot of the projections I had for where the players were going to be priced, the top players went for a lot cheaper. And that was consistent at the top. So it's really important for you, in my opinion, if you're running your auction this weekend, to adjust your strategy to the flow of the auction. What do I mean by that? If you're projecting top players to go for a lot of money and the money is not being spent there, understand that you are not going to want to have a lot of money at the end of your auction, which you typically would. And you're not going to be able to get the guys that are falling. You see Pearsall hasn't been nominated. Oh, this is awesome. I'm going to get Pearsall. No, you don't get Pearsall. Look at what Pearsall comes off the board for in this draft. Pearsall was in the stage of where a lot of people had money. And here comes Pearsall all the way in at $12. Matthew Golden up here at $13 because people were waiting and waiting and waiting. Oh, Golden's standing out in the rankings. Why isn't he going for more? Well, he ends up going for 13. Why hasn't he been nominated? He ends up going for 13. You have to understand the flow of your auction draft. So if money isn't being spent at the top and those players are all going for cheaper, money will be left over at the end and you'll be having to compete with too many people for your sleepers. On the flip side, if you're in one of those auctions, and I know there are a lot out there and people have reached out to me to say this, where it's nonstop. All the top players go for insane amounts. You can really benefit from having money at the end of that auction. You're going to get Pearsall for $6 instead of 13. And the same thing for Golden, because simply put, people have spent all their money. They do not have any of their budget left. So understand the flow of the auction is a really important one for me. Projecting the pricing is really important. Use past auctions that you've been in this league to project out the pricing, because that allows you to then adjust to the flow of the auction. So those are some key takeaways I had. I wanted to go back to my team though, Jacob. Let's scroll back through this. What do you think of this team? Obviously a weak bench, a lot more top heavy than I usually do it. I'm usually the guy who spends on their bench. That was intentional, Jacob. It wasn't just adjusting the flow of the draft. It was, I knew going in, we have 3 people playing in this league who are avid listeners of our podcast. And I knew I just simply wouldn't be able to get my sleepers in this draft. Everyone knew my takes, Jacob. So I had to adjust to it and go studs and duds based on that. But what do you think of how it played out?
I mean, it's a really good team. It's a 10-team league, so it should.
No, this is a 12 team. This is a 12 team.
Okay, nice. I wouldn't feel too bad about your QB3. It scares me because of Darnold being the QB2. But really, the only thing I've got, Dan, is you let somebody else get Colson Loveland for $3.
So the Loveland thing, yeah. So Loveland is a situation where I had these teams where I do go ahead and spend on Bowers. I am less likely to go Loveland. I did it in one league, but it's just it's a little more difficult for me to build it out, especially when I know, Jacob, that I'm going to be weak depth-wise at running back, where I'm disgustingly weak. And to some extent, at least for what I deem to be depth-wise at receiver, I don't really want to waste a bench spot. And especially when I'm wasting one on quarterback 4 with doing this Richardson-Jones thing, which I'm hoping just amends itself at some point with Jones getting benched, or I don't want to say the other thing. But it's a matter of roster construction. I couldn't afford to roster a second tight end.
Yeah, that's fair. For me, it's a start 2 receiver league, so I would just give that money to him and Tootin instead of Keon Coleman, but we don't need to get
it's a start 2 receiver and 2 separate flex, which I always want to be receivers.
Yeah. Okay.
So I view it as a start 4 receiver league to some extent. But yeah, this is how it looks if you go studs and duds. Again, not a lot of money allocated to my bench down here. Let's take a quick look at the teams that also are big listeners of this podcast. I'm going to start with Denberg. Hall, we read his question yesterday, his iTunes question. He's a huge fan of the show. I knew I couldn't get RJ Harvey. There he is at 19.
This is who has Tootin and who has Loveland. And then I looked and I was like, Josh Downs, Matthew Golden. This has got to be on the box score sicko.
Yep. He likes Deebo more than you, but I knew I'm so happy that I didn't save my money for the end of the draft, because I would have been in on Pearsall and Golden, and I don't want to pay $1 less for Golden than a player like George Pickens. I don't ever think that's going to be good value for me, at least, or even a bigger price for Golden than a player like Zay Flowers. This is just how I'm looking at it here. But I understand where he was at. He had a lot of money and he got all his guys, and the Tootin one was the worst. We already talked about this, but it was going once, going twice. So 6. I should have had Tootin. I'm still kind of bitter about that. The other person who listens to our podcast a lot is Steven, Vince, and Kevin. I want to give Kevin a shout out. Let's take a look at these 2 teams and your thoughts on this one. Jalen Hurts at 40, Bo Nix at 28. Devon Achane, during the time where we thought he might be injured, this could end up being a massive steal at 29. Connor, who I love, at 14. AJ Brown, Sutton, Ingram. Look at our boy here, Bill. $10. Heavy bid for Bill. Heavy Bill bid. Obviously, Rashee Rice, you got to love that at 11. Nobody wanted to get in on that. And some bench guys that we like there. What do you think of this squad?
Love the team. I think an astute comment here from Mr. TD on the last team. You can't get your guys every time, right? I think that is an easy.
What'd you say? What was his comment?
Can't get your guys every time.
Yeah. Yep.
That's an easy pitfall with auctions, is you just get a little too attached to guys, right? This team looks to me more like they kind of let the board fall to them. Whereas
I would agree with that.
James Conner at 14.
Sutton at 17 is a nice let the board fall to you.
I really like that when you've got like just right there Pacheco next to him at 18. Just looking around at the running back market, I don't think James Conner is a significantly worse bet than Kenneth Walker. That's one of the biggest things I've reflected on since our conversation is about the running backs that we did on Tuesday, is like James Conner, basically an identical bet to Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
And maybe has less injury risk. Either of, they both have some injury concerns. And I think, like, in my head, I want to say, but Kenneth Walker is so much better. He's so good. He's so good.
Much more explosive.
Look at freaking James Conner's film and analytical stuff. Like, it all points towards him being like
maybe the best bargain in fantasy. He really is
one of the best running backs in the league. And so it's like both of them. I like the off-to play designer a lot. We have a larger sample size of Drew Petzing designing a really cool run game and James Conner crushing within that. Both of them are projected for similar point totals. The Cardinals and the Seahawks, both leaning run heavy. Like, they're basically an identical bet. And I just think that I just want to bring that up and give you some credit, Dan. I really do value this time we get to discuss these rankings.
Me too.
And I've reflected on a lot of these where it's like, that's a good point, Dan. I'm too sensationalist with the, upside of like Kenneth Walker, who does all these sick moves and everything. And James Conner's just like, he's a good bet. He is, I think I'm punishing him for being like unspectacular.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. It's interesting because I think you're right. He let the board fall to him, which did a really good job, but then did get 2 of his guys he had to get, which is Rashee Rice and Krosky Moret. I think Rice will end up being a great steal for him. Most likely. This was before the suspension was finalized. Krosky Moret, you know me, I'm a little bit skeptical on our boy. It's just a lot. It's a big price to pay already for that profile. But again, look, if it hits, it's It's massive. Then finally, Kevin, who listens to our show, wanted to give him a shout out. I'm gonna give all the listeners of our show a shout out. Here's his team: Joe Burrow at 38, Trevor Lawrence 22, which again, he did a good job in the flow of a crazy hectic quarterback track. Quarterbacks in our league just never fall off. It's constant. You can't get a bargain there. There's no values across the board. It's just a flat pricing situation. Jahmyr Gibbs 35, Swift 11. He loved to get these two prices. He thought they were great. McConkey 26 and JSN 22. Kittle, look, $11. Like, tight ends just don't go for anything in auctions. I feel like maybe some leagues are different than others. Love this buy of Travis Hunter.
Yep.
He got it at a really good point of the auction. Like, if you look at some of the other pricing at receivers, this ends up being one of the better steals from a value standpoint. Obviously, he did the Kobe Myers before any of the news on Amari Cooper. So wanted to give those guys shout outs.
$1 Rashid Shaheed and Darnell Mooney. That's a sicko.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. And this is some good stuff here at the end of the auction. $1 Shaheed, $1 Mooney. Our auction, we have timeouts in our auction, which I would suggest every league adopts, which is one time per auction. You can call timeout in the middle of the bid and you get 30 seconds to reevaluate your pricing situation. You only get one. We give a pass as well if you want to pass on a nomination for strategic regions. We've thought of some interesting stuff that hasn't passed the voting, which is a wipeout, where you can at any point once per auction wipe out a bid, and it starts from scratch. That one we didn't adopt. That one's a little too crazy. Final note, I do a 10,000 word, usually it's between 8 and 10,000 word recap of the draft, and every single time I've done it, I do a power rankings. Whoever I've ranked number one, best team in the league, has completely fallen apart. It's like worse than the Madden jinx. So just if you're listening today, Kevin, Vince, and Steve Hall, no, you may be getting that Madden jinx, because, of course, Jacob, I'll never rank myself one.
I love this. You're still doing the league newsletter. That's like what I was doing when I was in middle school or whatever. But man, I gave up on that a long time ago.
It used to be so much better, Jacob. I used to do, before I had like this full-time gig, I used to do like bi-weekly power rankings in addition to the big draft recap. I've done a podcast on it before. We've done fun things with it. I try to keep it fun as commissioner and engaging and interesting.
Y'all gotta give Dan the Man a like, a comment, and everything.
Yeah, throw a like on this video.
Nobody is more dedicated than this man.
Throw a like on the video. We need your help. Like this video, subscribe, leave a comment. These are all things to juice it up the algorithm. And then please go to iTunes and Apple, where you can give us a rating and review. Speaking of, let's do that now, Jacob. Let's dive into and wrap the show up with some listener questions here. We've got a lot to get to today. I'm going to read them. And after I read them, I am going to go ahead and throw them to you, and then we'll kind of bounce back and forth. This is kind of like a mailbag podcast. Before we do that, let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake,
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Get ready.
Wait a second. I thought we were going tubing.
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Knuckles are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And everyone loves it.
Every adventure,
Just try to keep up.
every face-off,
This ends now.
and every moment that will have you saying,
Where have you been? My entire life!
It's showtime.
all 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and the entire Sonic universe are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, it's here, as promised. Listen, when you're starting a new podcast, and I've done this before with Big Blue Banter, it is insanely important. And I just want to reiterate this so people can understand why I'm so pushy with this stuff. It is insanely important to get reviews and ratings on iTunes and Spotify, because a lot of people don't know about our little show here, Jacob. And I feel that if they do know about it and they give it a chance, they'll stick with it. But it's the key of getting them in the door. And to get them in the door, if you rate and review our show and give us a 5-star rating and leave a question that you want answered in that rating, we will read it on the show because that will juice us up the algorithm, not just here on YouTube where it's valuable, but on iTunes and Spotify where we're rising up the charts for fantasy football. And I think if people type in fantasy or they're trying to prepare for their draft right before the season, we want our name to come up. We want it to populate, and we want people to give us a chance. And this is the best way to do it. So we're going to start with this question from Chandler. Yes, friends. And I'll say this, Chandler. Yes, friends. Just going to be honest with you. Not a big fan of the show, Friends. I just hate to say it. Look, there's just so many better sitcoms you have an opportunity to watch. I'd like you to get into them. Start with Parks and Recreation. You can start there. And it's just a much better show. And work your way down. I'll give you more if you need them. But besides that, I like you a lot as a person. And why is that? Simply because you gave us a 5-star review, my man. I mean, look, it's not that hard. Like you said, great new show, great, lots of data. My question is, I'm really struggling in my draft and picking between Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Brock Bowers, or Trey McBride. Now, I will say this, Chandler, a little bit of a rookie question. You didn't give us the data. Is it a PPR format, half PPR standard? How many receivers and running backs you start? We'd like to know that information. We don't have that. So let's default to half PPR, Jacob. Who are you taking?
Still Brock Bowers for me. I'm extremely bullish on the upside case for Bowers. And I think even if he doesn't get there, even if we don't get a ton of shootouts, he still can produce something similar to last year, even if he doesn't have as many targets and receptions as last year. I think he can offset it with more yards after the catch and more yardage efficiency overall on a per target and per route basis, and potentially more touchdowns. I think Geno Smith is so good for Brock Bowers. Max Toscano, who does, remember the tight ends, basically compared him to Puka Nacua. Like they play kind of similar roles with the way Puka Nacua is used in LA.
Good
and
point.
They have sort of similar skill sets. And I just think it's like, we got to get tight end out of our head here with Bowers. I think he's just like a really, really special player. I think adding another special player in Ashton Genty to this equation is just like really exciting. And then there's a number of ways where it could get to a big total if Chip Kelly plays fast like he has in the past. If Geno Smith is really good, if we have some kind of outlier year with Geno touchdowns or something, we get a lot of shootouts or something like that. I just want to bet on this player. But we've got some other special players here. Bucky Irving, Trey McBride, Chase Brown, close to that maybe, and with a really special setup. So it's definitely not an easy choice. But I would have Bowers at the top, then Bucky, then Chase, then McBride. For full PPR, it's the two running backs are dead even. You could go either way.
It's same for me, except Chase over Bucky for me, especially in PPR. Bowers, I want to bet. Look, when generational players hit the NFL and hit the ground running like Bowers did and dominate right away, they don't typically fall off for any reasons. Like, oh, where's the volume going to be there? Oh, what's going on? It's a little uncertain. No, he's a dominant player, a generational player that produced at an insane level from a fantasy standpoint. I want to buy that outside of the top 10 overall. There's not many talents I can get like that. I don't care that he plays tight end. Honestly, it's a benefit, Jacob. If he does dominate, you get a weekly advantage because he's so much better than the rest of the tight ends that you're matching up against. So let's move on to the next one. And we have from, as I filibuster this, as I'm waiting for producer Josh, and we can get this question up on the board because that's where I would like to read this. Are we going to JPZ? It looks like we are going to JPZ here. No, this is a comment. Here we go. This one we got from JPZ. It's a question, and it's going to be, I love the show. Thank you for the 5-star rating review. In a superflex league, if a superflex league has starting extra positions, interesting question, Jacob. Superflex league, starting extra positions are quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, 2 flexes. So 3 receivers and 2 flexes and a superflex. Does this lower the overall value of quarterbacks with so many other starting positions that need to be filled? Interesting. And if you have time, who would you take 5th overall in a startup dynasty league? PPR, tight end premium, 4 points passing, with this format in mind that you have to start all these players. Interesting.
Yeah, really specific question here. I would have to do some math on it to give you the real answer. In terms of where the positions drop off and stuff like that, and how this is going to affect the depth of the waiver wire and all of that, the replaceability, how many teams there are and all of that. Did he say how many teams there are? Because that definitely changes things too.
No, he did not. I assume 12 team, I'm going to guess.
Yeah. My general answer is no, I don't think so. I really prioritize the premium positions, especially in a league, but in any league, especially when it comes to Superflex or tight end premium or something like that. I just think that is the most important position by far. And that's what I would prioritize here. This is a dynasty league. Oh yeah, absolutely. It would not change the quarterbacks very much at all for me. So 5th overall pick. I think the top 5 for me would be all quarterbacks. What do you think on that, Dan?
Yeah, all quarterbacks for me. I wouldn't put Bowers into that mix, but definitely all quarterback. And the reason it doesn't impact it for me is the reason quarterbacks are so valuable in Superflex. It's valuable. It's not the scoring. It's not that they are playing, there's fewer other positions. And I do understand your point, by the way. It's a good thought, right? Like if there's other starting positions, it dilutes the actual scoring of the quarterback. But quarterbacks in Superflex are valuable based on supply and demand, and they always will be. There's just not a lot of starting quarterbacks in the NFL. There's not a lot of starting quarterbacks. There's not even enough for 3 on a team in Superflex. And then there's not a lot of longevity at the position in the NFL. That's the biggest factor, finding the guys that will continue to start and get snaps at quarterback. So I still think you have to be respectful of it and understand that it's very, very important to draft quarterbacks high.
I didn't catch it. It was tight in premium. I'm sorry.
It is, yeah.
And it's only 4 points per passing touchdown. So I would take Bowers there ahead of Joe Burrow at the 5 spot.
Okay. We are going to move forward here, and we have one somewhere, I believe, from Drew that I'm looking for here. Let's see. I'm having a little trouble with this one. I apologize for that.
I think we've got it up.
Yeah, I can't read from there.
I got it.
Okay, you got it?
Yeah, Drew, I don't want my league mates to know about this podcast. This is a sentiment we get a lot. Unfortunately, we get gatekept by about half of our listeners, which is sad. We put in so much work for you guys. Come on.
I respect it to some extent, though. I'm not going to lie.
It's a compliment. It's kind of strange, isn't it? I'm not really incentivized to share this content. My question is, why is there not more FF content around auction and salary cap drafts? I haven't met any hardcore FF players who don't prefer the increased strategy and fairness of an auction. And this is where we run into problems. Okay, so when I go full screen, I can't see the bottom of it, Josh, but luckily it's just the word draft here. So the question is, why is there not more content around auction and salary cap drafts? Well, that's what we're doing, right? That's Stan the Man giving us the good content here. I think these are really fun ways to play. I think, honestly, this maybe sounds crazy because fantasy's been around for a long time. We're still kind of in the adoption phase, like it wasn't that long ago that everybody thought that you were a huge nerd if you play fantasy. And football players were like actively perturbed by fantasy football's existence and stuff like that. That wasn't that long ago. I think that things are evolving and that takes time. And we're going to continue to find more and more fun ways to play. Dan and I recently on the tight end show yesterday and quarterback show, we're talking about we need to get more and more point per first down leagues, so yeah, I love the idea, and I think we'll keep moving that way.
I think next off season when we have it, a year under our belts of doing this, Jacob, we'll do a lot more auction content. But it is what it is. In fantasy, if you look at the actual numbers, not a lot. I know the diehards and the nerds like us are doing it a lot. To me, I won't make the case again now on this show, Jacob. I've made it so many times on the main FFT feed. I don't even think Snake and auction are comparable. I think they're completely 2 different games. I think just going over what I went over before, when in a Snake do you ever have to do what I did in an auction? Understand that the spending at the top is not as pricey as it was supposed to be or projected to be or has been in the past. That means there's going to be more money at the end, and you don't want to be drafting within that glut of money. That never happens in a Snake. It's just the Snake. It just falls as it falls. And you have to draft the team where you're positioned. It's not really remotely the same to me. I won't go on this rant again, Jacob. It's bad for my health. It's bad for my blood pressure, and I've done it too many times. But we will continue to do more auction, I think, than a lot of shows, and we're going to try to work that in even more. Let's move on to a question here next from Anti-Loki, which I guess means he's not a fan of Loki, either the show, which I thought was actually excellent on Disney Plus, or the character in Marvel, which, again, how can you not be a fan of Loki? He's funny. He's quirky. Look, he's somewhat like an anti-hero, if he's even considered a hero at all. But I'm not really deep on this anti-Lokis. I'm not in on this anti-Loki stuff. But I am in on you, anti-Lokis. You gave us a 5-star review and said you love the deep analysis. Said, I'm really enjoying the show and the deep takes they did. And much more than just the ratings. The show on preseason analysis with Dave was excellent. Thank you. We were really excited to have Dave on. And I thought we did something different there talking about preseason tape. His question, though, is, if I can draft 3 of these following 6, who should I take? Trevion Henderson, Ted McMillan, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Swift, Jalen Waddle, and Tony Pollard.
You go first. Give me a second to think about this.
Sure. For me, it's Ted to start, then Trevion Henderson in that order you listed them, And I'm rounding out with Waddle or Ridley, and I'm going to go Ridley. So I'm going to go Ridley, Travion, and Tet McMillan.
Yeah, I agree, but I think no, I actually have Pollard ahead of Ridley, and that's who we put on our best value show too, was Pollard over Ridley.
Yeah.
So I would push for him. Again, we got to get format. We got to get the format down here, guys, where we know what type of league we're talking about here.
Yeah. Leave for future questions. Put in your scoring format and rosters, stuff like that. All right, let's move to the next one here. I believe this next one will be Bigfoot 72. You know, Jacob, are you a Bigfoot conspiracy guy at all?
Sure.
You believe it's possible?
Yeah, anything.
I kind of think it's possible too, Bigfoot. That one Zapruder film, it really did. It checked out to some extent, but we're not going to get into this any further than that already was, which was already too much Bigfoot discussion for a fantasy football podcast. But he says, I love the advanced data. I love the work you're both doing and enjoying tuning in for my long drives home from work. I hope you have a really long drive for today's show. I wanted to ask, are we undervaluing the Pickens edition means for CeeDee Lamb? Interesting. I feel like everyone's talking about Pickens, but won't having a player like Pickens on the roster open up things for Lamb? I think we've discussed this a little bit. So let's get to the question instead. Quick keeper question. Keep 2. Neighbors with a 6th round value, Chase Brown with an 11th, or JSN with a 14th. I know my 2.
Huh. Yeah. I think I would just go with Neighbors and Chase Brown.
Yeah.
It's tempting to like go with the 14th there and just get like max value, but I just feel so much better about the Neighbors bet.
I'm with you on that one. To me, obviously Chase Brown's the slam dunk of that, but I got to go Neighbors there. I feel more confident in that. Let's get to Rocky S215. Thank you for giving Dan an excuse to talk about The Wire. You know what? I haven't talked about The Wire enough on this show.
We're all business on this show.
Business on this show.
The Monday show with Adam.
But like Stringer Bell said, get the word up, we back up. Get the word out, we back up. I think I butchered that. But I've genuinely been waiting for more Jacob and Dan content. Thank you. I appreciate that. It feels like Christmas. Thank you. Thank you. The combo of friendship, comfort, and in-depth fantasy content entertains me, makes me laugh, and teaches me something good. That's the objective. Here's my question. What is Dan's? I love these type of questions.
Good
Do
question.
more of these.
Good question.
What is Dan's favorite season of The Wire, and who are his favorite characters? Okay. So have you seen The Wire, Jacob, or no? You have, right?
Big time. I was on mute. Sorry. Yeah, I love The Wire.
Okay, good. So I'm talking to a fellow fan, unlike Adam Azer, who, I'm just going to use the word idiotically called it a boring show. He's not an idiot. That doesn't make him one. But in that one take, he was just to consider this a boring show. It's just, I get it. It's a lot to grasp at first. Like they shoot 12 characters at you in the first season, the first 6 episodes. And until that big moment in season 1, I get it. It's a little slow, but they have to build the story. And then it's just nonstop from there. But anyway,
the thing with The Wire is like, you have to be paying attention.
Right.
And
every conversation matters. Every piece of dialogue matters. No show has done that.
Chill out. I know you want to just talk. You have to be paying attention, and it's a slow burn. It's not sensationalized or anything. Like it gets dramatic, of course, but like it's kind of just a story of like what's going on in real life in this area. You know, it is very much realism. And so like there are times where it feels like you're paying this close attention and the stakes don't amount to anything for you. You know what I mean? It definitely does scale up and up and up. But like you could go a few episodes in a row where you're just like, I'm bored. Like I needed a bigger reward for me to invest that much attention into this.
Which I get. But if you get really into the nitty gritty of it, you can kind of understand the reward is within that, within the dialogue of many scenes. But
that's right.
Favorite season of The Wire. It's always a tough debate for me between 3 and 4. 4 with the kids is amazing in its own right. Really a restart of the story. We had the 3-season arc of the Barksdales, but for me, it will always come down to 3. The ending, the rooftop scene with Stringer and Avon, the scene in the alley between Brother Mazoon and Omar. With this caliber, from this range, even if I miss, I can't miss, is one of the best lines of all time. I think that season doesn't have the Omar court scene. I think that's from earlier in the series. But season 3, I will say this, the most underrated season of The Wire by far is season 2, which is ranked 3 for me and unbelievable on second. But it's better on second rewatch. And I think the worst season, people have always asked me this one. I'm going to give this last take, Jacob. 5 is the worst season, but I do still think the street stuff in 5 is amazing. The cop stuff is pretty good. It's just the weird stuff going on with the newspaper. It just didn't work.
Fair enough. I'll give some love to season 2 because I know a lot of people hate it, and I actually thought it was great. Yeah, I think the one with the kids, is that 3 or 4? I can't remember.
The kids is 4.
4. I think that's probably my favorite, which
It's
I think
most
is
people's favorite.
okay. Yeah. And it's got to be Omar. Did you give a favorite character? It's like so clearly Omar for me.
He said favorite character too. Oh, that's a great question. It's not Omar for me.
I'll give it to Bunk, man. Me and my friends still to this day do the she.
Oh, no. You're thinking Clay Davis.
Oh, Day, you're right.
Yeah, it's okay though. But
I haven't seen it in a long time.
Bunk is my favorite on the cop side. He's not my favorite overall character. My favorite overall character is Bodie, the truest soldier, the truest meaning.
Very cool.
Everything about The Wire is Bodie to me. And then the most underrated character for me, we didn't ask that, but we'll do it, is either Prop Joe or Slim Charles.
Awesome.
So there we go. All right, we got to answer a
Sorry
Wire.
to be a casual, dude.
No. It's okay. I'm just happy we got to talk about The Wire on this show. I'm sure some people won't be, though. Whenever I talk about other things in football on my show, Big Blue Banter, if you're interested in Giants podcast, check that out. Shameless plug. People hate it. Let's get to Zogi P's 5-star rating and review and question, because Zogi isn't asking about The Wire. He's asking, should a second flex spot in a 10-team half PPR league impact your draft strategy? I've heard more wide receivers in those flexes give you more upside. Do you agree?
Yeah. I don't know if that's interesting. More upside. Like if you can hit on running backs, I think that is where you get the most upside, is on a 10-team half PPR league. Like if you're able to get 4 running backs who are in the top 15 or whatever, like that is going to be pretty hard to replicate with receivers, is how I would say that. But that's pretty rare, I think, to be able to hit that, like you have to kind of hit on some random like Baishal Tutins or something like that, because otherwise that means you're investing that heavily in the running back position, which is going to really affect the rest of your team.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Receivers a lot more attainable. You can like load up on good receivers that you feel real good about the upside shot.
Yeah, I think you just nailed how I feel about that one. Let's go to Scotty Boops. Scotty Boops. Is Scotty the dog getting boops, or Scotty giving boops to his dog? We don't know. We all like boops with the dog because, are you a dog guy, Jacob?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, Boop, the dog. Oh, all right. Well, this one went over my head too. I think I've just kind of maybe even potentially made that up. But we'll get into this comment by Scotty Boops. It's a trade analyzer. Hey, Dan and Jacob, big fan of the show. Been listening to you guys. Guys, we're into like hour 3 on this show. The things are going to get a little off the rails. We have to understand that and appreciate it, I hope. But he's been listening to the show for a while, and he can't tell you how hyped he is that we have our own show. Thank you. We appreciate that. He just made a trade in Dynasty, and he feels like he might have made a mistake. Uh-oh. My team's rebuilding, he says, and probably not competing until 26 or 27, but I traded away. He didn't tell us if it's a super flex or not. He traded away Josh Allen and Joe Milton for Jaden Daniels and Jalen Milroe. He said, I want to get younger at quarterback 1, and I want to get younger quarterback that would be in his prime when I'm competing. And Josh Allen may start to decline at that time. What do you guys think? Interesting.
It's greedy. I think no. I'd rather have Josh Allen.
I think it's a no for me, just because my biggest concern with Jaden, I did a huge evaluation on him for Big Blue Banter. We did all the quarterbacks. My biggest concern was data that Nate Tice brought up about quarterbacks' longevity in the NFL at sub 200 pounds. Jaden Daniels will never play at more than 190, 195, in my opinion. I know he is young, sort of 24, 25, and maybe he can grow into his frame a little bit more. But if you look at his build, man, it doesn't look like a build that is going to add weight. So he'll probably be a sub 200 his whole career. And the history of sub 200 staying in the NFL and having a long career is next to none. I think the leader is Kirk Cousins, who's had like 3 great seasons at sub 200. Jeff Garcia did it a couple times. The data is really bad. So he has to be an outlier. And he kind of is an outlier. But he's an outlier from production standpoint, in the sense that he had a really high scramble rate at LSU, and he kind of toned that down already in year 1 with the Commanders. Is he an outlier from an injury standpoint, a longevity standpoint? That's tough to know. Based on that alone, I'm taking Josh Allen there in that trade. Let's move forward to another question here, though.
Shout out Austin in the chat.
Austin Lim's been great.
Hour 3 Dan can't be beat. Anything can be said. And like shout out Austin also for making our freaking fan-made intro with the 8-bit.
Yes.
The gets me excited every time.
Austin Lim's the MVP of the show for a multitude of reasons. 1, the intro. 2, just constantly supporting us and being in every show. And then a lot of great interactions with Austin on Twitter as well. Great dude. And thank you for supporting the show. We appreciate all these day oneers. Let's get to another question, though, from Yelnats187. Wow, Yelnats187. I don't even know what Yelnats is or what he meant by that. So I'm just going to get right into the question. He said, I have several fantasy podcasts I listen to, but none analyze fantasy from the perspective of this one. That's great. We're trying to be unique. I love the additional context they provide with deep dives into the tape and the stats. Glad they have their own space now to shine. Great. Thank you. Or to share their insights. I'm just going to use the word shine. My question, 10 QB. I guess that's 10 team. Maybe he means by that 10 team QB, 1 QB. I don't know what he means by 10 QB. We're going to find out as we go through this question, Jacob. 4-point passing TD league. I'm going to target getting May, but I want to pair him with someone I think could be safer. So I think it's 1 QB league. And he meant to not put the 0. Could that be Dak, Love, or Herbert? Who do you recommend, or do you suggest someone entirely different? Dak, but I don't recommend him because Dak, you have to pay the price. You have to pay an iron price for him. He's not falling into a range of, like, if you're taking May, you want to pair him with somebody safe but not ranked as high. Dak, you'll never get there. So Herbert, I don't think you'll get either. I think for me, it's between Love, Stroud, and Lawrence. But we'll go with Love here because out of the consensus of those 3 players, I think Jacob and I are consensus-wise highest on Love.
I just don't think Love is safe at all.
That's interesting, but I don't think we think Stroud or Lawrence are probably safe at all, really, either, right?
Yeah.
Stroud's kind of safe to me.
I think I would go with Geno for way cheaper.
Okay.
I think he's kind of like Love, where it's like a really good real life player. I guess that's what I mean. Is like at his price, I don't necessarily see Love as safe. And really good real life player in an offense that's probably going to be really run heavy. And that's why I'm worried about Love. It's like he's been dealing with some injuries. Jaden Reed, the injury stuff continues to sound really scary. And so like if this team just does what they did last year, then it's like that kind of sucks for fantasy.
Yeah. It's a good point. And then it's going to be a lot of running, and it's going to be less of what we need out of Love because Love's not getting us points on the ground, really. All right, let's get to another question here from Sportsman80. He says, awesome podcast. Thank you for the 5-star review. Is it crazy to start my guillotine league with Joe Flacco? What does he mean by that? I think he has to mean just have Joe Flacco as his starter in guillotine.
Right.
Obviously, he's not like, I'm going to take Joe Flacco in the first round.
I mean, it depends because like some people are in like 18 team leagues or whatever, where it goes all the way down to the last week of the season. In anything that's 12 teams or bigger, if you let's say 14 teams or bigger, if you got awesome picks with the rest of your roster, I think I'm fine with it. Because I mean, Flacco, I wouldn't be surprised if Flacco's like QB 14 in my rankings going into week 1 against the Bengals. I'll of course have to dig into each game and how I'm projecting them to produce plays and everything. But like that's where he's been. Did you say the other day that he has his last 17 games, he has over 4K passing?
This was a Heath Cummings stat in his last full 17 games, over 4K passing, and there are 30 touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, like the guy can sling it. And every time we've seen him get an opportunity lately, the team leans into passing a lot. There's uncertainty at the running back position there. They thought they had like the early down bell cow, and now it's maybe not. They have 2 kind of undersized guys that are going to be, it seems like, leading the backfield. Against the Bengals with Kevin Stefanski at coach, like that could easily be a really productive player.
Yeah, and you get the Bengals early. It's an interesting play to wait at quarterback in guillotine, where I typically think quarterbacks are more valuable because they're the guaranteed points producers, and your whole goal is to not have the least points in a given week. But to go with Flacco, who does kind of provide that floor for guillotine leagues, I like it. Honestly, I think it's an interesting strategy. The NFL is a weird game, man. Like the Colts decided to move on from Flacco and sign Daniel Jones. I would bet a lot of money that the Colts passing game and total offense will be worse in the games Jones starts this year than it was with Flacco, despite better health with the receiving options. But it just doesn't make sense then. Why are you just not re-signing Flacco for nothing? I just don't understand it. Let's do a couple bonus questions that weren't supposed to be part of the show. I want to get through as many questions as we can, as long as you're okay with it, Jacob. I want to throw a few more in there. Yeah. Okay. Let's start with this one. Solid facts and thoughts from Sorry for Kicking Ya Homeboy. Okay. Love you guys. Just want to give you a 5-star review. Perfect combination of facts and thoughts. Thank you. Quick question for the pod. Can you talk a little bit about factoring in the bye weeks into your draft? Good question. Do you do that at all?
Not really.
Same. Yeah, I mean, look, not really. To the point where I screwed up in the Superflex League and I drafted 2 quarterbacks who are going to be bye week the same week. It's deeper into the season. Quarterbacks come available on the wire. There's a lot of quarterback injuries. I'm not as worried about it. I don't factor it in. I want to get the best possible players. And even if you have those kind of tricky bye week situations, it does mean that you're more stacked for the other week. So I do kind of feel like it evens out, but I don't know. Let's keep going here and get a few more of these in. Best episode. Okay, we're just compliments, which we appreciate in the reviews, but I am looking for questions. And I got one here with Aces83. He says, maybe this analysis matches my own, but finally, a very in-depth podcast that isn't afraid to cover everything. Jacob is my new fantasy guy, and Dan, you need to get on the Seahawks train. You might be right about that. What, prior to the season, he asks, late round draft pick would you consider keeping for 2 years at cost? Colston Loveland, maybe. Drake May. I previously kept Jaden Daniels and Rome for this year to give you examples of who.
Yeah, Loveland and May are great. The person who came to mind, just because I'm like sick in the head right now, is Isaac Tesla. But it's like, I think you want, and that could be great, but you want the guys where it's like, that's a blue chip prospect. Sure. You know what I'm saying? And that's the kind of investment you have with those guys. Let me look at my rankings compared to consensus real quick and see if I can come up with some other names. Do you have anybody?
Loveland and May for sure. Those are the first 2 that come to mind. Let's think who else that could be. I mean, if Kincaid does finally break out, I wouldn't hate throwing him in the mix there as well. Brenton Strange potentially is a guy late at tight end that we like that also kind of fits that billing.
I've got names. Matthew Golden, I think, is great.
Golden's a little too high. I think we're looking deeper than Golden.
Okay.
Great, obviously.
Tuden comes to mind, but he's not necessarily what I just described with the blue chip. It's like we don't know what will happen this year.
I don't think we'll get any more blue chips in this mix, potentially.
Yeah.
Loveland and May are kind of the only ones you can kind of get in that range. So I definitely like that. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Jalen Coker.
Okay, Jalen Coker. Maybe Dory Orton.
Harold Fannin.
Okay. Can't guard Mike 315 says, a daily listener of the CBS feeds. Thank God I found the feed. Question, you guys are the rare network that acknowledges 6-point passing TDs. I am in a 10 team, 1 QB, half PPR, 6-point passing TD. Can you predict what picks 1 through 20 I should look at? I am leaning CMC with the 6th pick. P.S. I am a 9 handicap and would struggle in a 4x1 scramble against grown men. I think they would need to be blind for me to win. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Just to reiterate on this real quickly, producer Thomas, who's not on the show, but I hope he hears this and I will tell him about this, thinks he can beat me, Heath, Dave, Jamie, and Adam in a 5-versus-1 scramble. Or maybe we weren't including something in golf. Do you know golf at all, Jacob?
I know enough to know what a 5-versus-1 scramble would be. And just like knowing math, it's like,
right,
you're going to have to play a pretty dang good game.
We get 5 putts for every one of Thomas's putts. Thomas is an 11 cap. I'm an 18-1, and Heath was good at one point. So he's probably playing in like the 20 range now at some point. Yeah. Even just a 20 cap and an 18 cap against an 11-1, straight up, I think we can take him. And now you add in an occasional Jamie putt that goes in or something. Maybe somebody can have a really crazy bump and run chip that rolls to the hole. I'm just saying, look, we're probably not using most of their shots until we get near around the green, but just having 3 extra shots around the green with me and Heath, that's enough. Oh, yeah. So Thomas has walked back this take a little bit in recent weeks. I've had some private discussions with Thomas, but listen, Thomas, thank you for saying that. But anyway, pick 6, I am leaning CMC too. Look, I'm very high on CMC. I understand it's a tough pick for a lot of players to make, but in half PPR, I'm taking CMC at 6.
Yeah, I'm totally good with that. It's him and Nico Collins are pretty much right next to each other for me.
Okay. All right, let's go to this next one here. I'm kind of just rolling through these, trying to find questions, but we're trying to get to as many as we can. A lot of these are compliments, which I do appreciate. But if I can find a question here, I am going to get to one.
I have another player to insert on the question before that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Brandon Ayuk could be a really good keeper pick this year for the next 2 years. If he returns to form, this is a guy that was going in like round 2, 3, and you can get him in like round 12 or whatever.
Yeah, I like that one. It's good too. Okay, let's see. We got one here. It is from PP17499BDB. Yeah, that's a lot of numbers and letters. Fantasy football today beyond the box scores top tier. Dan and Jacob are absolutely full of knowledge. Thank you. I listen to a ton of other podcasts, but theirs is the most, and their most recent episode on abusing ADPs across different platforms, the best I've ever heard anywhere. Thank you. Wow. Really, thank you. Appreciate it. Clear, sharp, and actionable advice. Thank you so much. Question. In a 3-year keeper standard format, who would you choose for your wide receiver 1? A.J. Brown, Drake London, or St. Brown? So you can keep them for 3 years, including this one.
That's really tough.
Drake, right?
Well, we're hoping that Drake can be St. Brown.
Yeah.
We're hoping that Penix can be a quarterback solution for 3 years. I think I would just have to take the coward's way out and take St. Brown.
I'm also taking St. Brown.
Yeah.
It's less if, though. Obviously, if Penix does reach his ceiling, that's going to be the guy you wanted there, and Drake London based on the age. But I'm with Jacob on this one. Let's see if I can find a couple more, and we'll get out of here, and we'll read the rest on future episodes. Just so you know, we're rifling through questions here because we want reviews and ratings on iTunes. I was blanking for a second as I'm looking through questions. Here we go. We got
last one.
Here.
Last one
For sure. It's from Lord something. Lord ... He says, 2 QB league, PPR, 10-team home league. They devalue QBs, he says. I have the first pick, and I plan on taking Chase. I'm hoping at the 2-3 turn, knowing the top 4 QBs are going to be gone before that, he'll push down some elite talent. BTJ, Drake London, Achane. I'm thinking of taking 2 or more of those elite wide receiver after going with Chase. Then at the 4-5, I get 2 running backs. Then in the later rounds, I still get J.J. McCarthy, T. Law, Bryce Young. Am I crazy to do this in 2 QB league, or does this roster construction make sense to you? So I'll tell you this. It only makes sense if you know your league well enough to know that devaluing QBs will continue to happen. It won't change year to year. And you can definitely get 3 of those players that you mentioned. If you miss at all on that, or that strategy goes awry, you don't leave yourself any kind of backup plan by skipping QB. So I don't hate the strategy, but I just want to make sure you're aware that it really is dependent on your league. Anything else to add there, Jacob? Nope. All right. That's it. Got it under 3 hours. It's not our longest stream. That'll be the quarterback rankings podcast that we did earlier this summer. Check that out if you want to listen to us talk for hours about quarterbacks. Thank you so much to everybody listening in. Thank you to everybody who hit the like button on the show, left a comment, left a rating and review that we went over today. If we missed your review and your question, we will answer them coming forward. So leave a rating and review on Spotify or iTunes with a question, and we'll get to it. And thank you to producer Josh for dominating the show and somehow staying with us for the length of this show. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.